Everyone, welcome to the planning board meeting, January 12th, starting at 6:36. Thank you for joining us. We have a number of items on our agenda today. The first are some administrative items, then a public hearing for Evelyn's Way subdivision, then some zoning bylaw amendments, discuss the comprehensive plan implementation and the planning director's report. We expect to be joined by town council Amy Questle at some point. Whenever she joins us, we're going to move around the agenda so that we can accommodate her time. Any issues with any of that from the board members? Thanks. All right, then let's go ahead and dive into administrative items, although they could be moved as a single item.
Do we need a preamble?
No.
We still need a preamble irrespective of the fact that there are no board members here.
Go ahead.
Pursuant to chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 and as amended as of March 28, 2025, this meeting will be conducted in person and as a courtesy by remote means in accordance with applicable law. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public and board members, the meeting or hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast as required by law. Members of the public who would watch the meeting may do so by using Zoom link login shown in the agenda. Viewers can visit https://thelocalscene.media/Duxbury for information about Duxbury's programming, including streaming, marketing replays on Duxbury YouTube.
Thank you very much, Steve. All right, so for agenda item 1, we have administrative items. We could move these as a single item. However, I suspect that we're going to want to break these out. So why don't we start with minutes from December 8th and 22nd? Does anybody from the board have any changes or comments on either of these minutes?
I wasn't here on the 22nd, so I'll stay, but nothing on the earlier one.
Okay, I would be happy to entertain a motion to approve those as one item together.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those, no? Abstaining? All right, one abstention, that passes. Next up, CBA case 2025-20. This is for 910 and 934 Temple Street Comprehensive Permit at 40B. I believe that we have some people in the audience who would like to talk with us about that. Is that correct? I would like to stand up and for presentation. Sometimes we have it visible. But it sounds like looks like you don't have anything, so.
Good evening. My name is Salem Fedora. I'm here on behalf of the Villas of Kingbrook. With me is Munir Tayyara. I'm general counsel of Stonebridge, and Munir runs a sister company of ours. I understand the board is acting in a consulting capacity to the ZBA. I'll try to answer any questions you have this evening, but if not, I'll get that information to the board on Thursday.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions from the board for our applicant here regarding 40B?
I do not.
Okay. Questions, thoughts, comments? So we can come back to you.
Yeah, why don't I
Okay, Matt.
No. Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to see this on Thursday.
Okay. Yeah, I think we did provide a letter to the select board. I think that went on to Mass Housing. I think you've probably seen a copy too. It was front and back. We'll send the same letter, maybe with some additions on to the ZBA so that they have our thoughts. I think that I'm probably saying this wrong. I can refer to this Mass Housing, but the state group did point out that one of the things we strongly suggested was a shared septic system as opposed to individual. Because it's it's surrounded by wetlands and it hits, I think, both the north and the south. And I bet Tag is going to talk to this in a second. So that was one of our big concerns was the fact that we wanted to ensure that the water quality for the river, the wetlands there. And then the second thing was that the houses will back up to Route 3, and that's definitely a concern from a quality of life point of view. So anything you can do to help with that would be great. I think one of our primary concerns along that was especially those three, I think it's 3 houses that are like some communities might call it on a pipe stem along driveway. If there's any way to reconfigure that or do something so that because they're looking at somebody's backyard and then they've got the highway right behind them. And I understand it's a tricky spot, but that was definitely something that, it was a concern of ours. So as you're right, we are in a consulting capacity, but you take that into consideration. We appreciate that.
Certainly, we are already taking it into consideration and exploring feasibility of all three concerns that you mentioned.
Great, thank you. Good tag.
I don't really cover the issues in the letter, so I really just want to, encourage you to take these issues very seriously. And we are facing compromise to our aquifer, and I want to point out that even though it wasn't mentioned in the letter, this is aquifer protection overlay, which actually is a different premise entirely. So, I'm sorry.
It's zone 2, yes.
Yeah, because the premise being there's a 60,000 square foot per lot baseline to start from. So even if you're going to double density, you would still only have 2/3 of the units that you're proposing. So it's very serious.
Understood, and I think we're exploring several different options that might address that, yeah.
Looking forward to the ZBA discussion.
And one thing I will note, I think in the original plan, there were, what we kind of refer to as snout nose houses where the garage pokes out. It looks like with the designs, you pulled that back, so I appreciate that. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Okay. All right, so I'll entertain a motion to,
Sorry.
oh, yeah, sorry, Mike.
Sorry,
Yes.
So I guess just my kind of question for you or for the whole board is just, do you want to issue a new letter kind of officially now that the ZBA has received the application, or is the previous letter sufficient? It sounds like they've obviously seen the previous letter, and it's probably in the files the ZBA has got.
I can tell you that is true.
You've seen the letter?
Yeah, I've seen the letter.
Okay.
Yeah, so in this case, maybe it's not necessary, but it's up to the board. If if the board does want to do a new letter, of course, then the question, should it just repeat what the other one said, or should it make tweaks to them? But it sounds like the concerns are more or less the same as what kind of was put together in the previous letter.
Anything anybody want to add, or we build the letter section?
I think the letter we issued is sufficient. I think we covered pretty much everything we covered.
Would we like, I'll entertain the motion to defer this.
So,
Any discussion? Roll call vote. All those in favor?
aye.
Defer, no. Abstain, okay, all right, thank you. Motion passes, thank you. Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you for inviting us.
Oh, you're welcome, thank you. Good luck, you'll see Wayne on Thursday. All right, next up, we will talk about ZBA case 2025-21, 23 Ocean Road South for a special permit. Do we have anybody in the audience for that, or anybody on Zoom?
Hi. My name is Carly Tobias. Can you guys hear me?
Really loud.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes,
Barely?
hear you very well.
Oh, you can? Okay. Oh, that's good. I'm actually in my car right outside the office space. I could be in person if you'd like me to talk about what we're proposing to do in like one moment, if that's okay.
Better, yes, thank you.
Please.
We'll see you momentarily. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I see that Amy, our town council, has arrived. That could be a long topic. We also have the public hearing too. Guess we'll probably want to go ahead and address. We want to pause and wait for the special permit, or do we want to go ahead and start with Amy?
Oh, Amy's here, good.
Let's see. Apologize for that.
We're just gonna wait, give the applicant for Ocean Road South just a minute or two to come on in.
I wonder if she's at town hall.
Did she say town hall?
No, she said outside the office. Yeah.
Right, which is, I was wondering
So
about that too.
I'm wondering if she's out in the parking lot here or town hall.
All right, why don't we go ahead and move to, in terms of time, why don't we go ahead and move to, onto, since we have, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda three, if that's okay with the board, and discuss the bylaws, if we have reading. The first step would be to talk about the battery energy storage systems. We have.
Kristen,
Yes.
this is a suggestion,
Yeah.
whatever you want to do, but. There seems to be a suggestion that we should move the broader recodification until a
Yes.
subsequent town meeting.
Yep, yep.
And that, at least from the planning boards or the planning director's report, that you were hopeful to get the board's view on that. And I do think that could be addressed
Very
pretty
quickly.
quickly.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so let's talk about that. Yes, so one of the topics here, we have 5 potential bylaws that we could bring to town meeting this year. One is the zoning recodification. We have Jim here on the line on the upper left. He is actually chair of the zoning recodification working group.
Sorry, Kristen, I think this might be the person for the ocean. Right?
I know. Hey, I just a second, we started, so we're just gonna give us.
No
a second.
worries at all, please.
That'd be
Take your
great.
time.
All right, thanks. And so Jim is here just to is a reference point. So one of the things we talked about with the zoning recodification, there are a couple different the goal was to reorganize and recodify that, and then go to the group decided to reorganize, move all the definitions to the front, add a use table, and start to work on some definitions. And because this has been a long process and we really haven't had enough time for the board to put another set of eyes on this and review it, we thought it might make sense. As much as we would really like to bring this to town meeting this year, we thought I would recommend that we put this, that we take the time for us as a board to really review this in detail and make sure that we understand what was there before, what's there now, and go through this bit by bit, and then have the working group come in and consult with us so that we have a really strong understanding. Because when we go to town meeting, we want to make sure that we're transparent and we have traceabilities to all the work that was done. So if anyone have any thoughts on that?
That recommendation, yeah. My only thought there would be, so the idea is that we would defer this to the calendar 27 annual town meeting. To the extent that we have, or that we might have a special town meeting this fall, would we consider deferring it to that instead of to this year on this?
I like your hopefulness there. See, I actually had the same thought. I thought, you know what? I think what might be a goal would be to try to wrap this up, say by May or June, in the event that we do have a special town meeting in the summer or the fall. So I don't think this is something we want to linger. The working group has been working on this a long time. This has been the process for 15 years. And I think there are a lot of us who are really eager to move this forward. So I would encourage us, I think that our goal would be to really focus on this after we work on whatever we need to for the actual district town meeting, to go ahead and like focus on this spring so that we're ready to go. But I agree.
Kristen, may I make a comment?
Please go ahead, Jim.
Just basically, my understanding is that there may be an end of the year deadline for doing something with the best bylaw. And I think it might, planning board might consider whether to address both it and the recodification in a late fall, early winter special town meeting. I expect as we go forward, we'll find there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the best, and there is also considerable work that could be done on the recodification.
Yeah, that's a good thought. Thank you.
I guess maybe.
Wayne.
I'd like to respond to that, and with all due respect to Jim. And Jim knows that with all due respect, something else is coming.
Yeah.
All respect that is due will be given, Wayne.
I think we need to deal with the best bylaw now. And I don't want to deal with the recodification now, and I don't want to deal with the recodification now, in large part because of the notion that I am of the mind that the level at which we are hoping to recodify is going to result in a complete relook by the Attorney General as to our entire bylaw.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that right now. And so my strong preference would be to move the recodification effort down the road, whether it's in the next special town meeting or the following regular annual town meeting. But I do want to address the best bylaw, and I will. I'd like to do that sooner rather than later.
Pat, any thoughts there?
I agree. I think the best is more urgent.
And thoughts on recodification? You said you're in agreement with pushing that off.
I am, because I do think it's gonna be a bit of more of a heavier lift than we think it's gonna be.
Yeah.
And trying to push that through with the other items we still have to address with.
Yeah.
I think we'll do a disservice to what that's gonna take.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, I agree with the schedule suggestion that the recodification needs more attention. And I want to reiterate the analysis I provided through email that what we have in hand today is much more than a recodification, because it includes legal standardization. Recodification would just be a strictly reorganization without any verbiage changes at all. And even the idea of moving the definitions to the beginning, because of the way the definitions are sometimes embedded within the language and they're used in different places, and then it has to be reconciled, that results in verbiage changes. And as pointed out by observers, the verbiage changes do have an impact on policy, and those impacts are not apparent until the revised verbiage is completed. And then the implementation of the bylaw can be considered by the building inspector, by the planning director, zoning board of appeals. Anyone who has to work with the bylaw has to be able to see the revised body of work and mentally work through examples. There's a thought experiment, if you will, and in software terms, we would call this a test. You have to test it to see whether the policy has substantially changed. And if it has, we have to be clear about that to town meeting. Because if we're not clear up front, then we're going to have to explore those issues on the floor, and that diminishes the prospects for passage. So I would strongly encourage that we find a way to work with the zoning recodification working group and the vendor to separate and isolate the recodification changes from the organization of the definitions, from any standardization of legal language, and that such standardizations be categorized as to mandatory standardizations, which clearly are required, as versus more speculative changes that are being done in anticipation of potential future challenges. Because this is an area of policy which is debatable. If we don't engage in that debate, we're doing a disservice to it. So that's just much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Any other thoughts, Steve?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. All right, so it sounds.
Can I take just one more comment on this? I'm not sure whether you have had the opportunity to see the list of all of the changes, close quote, that were made. It was quite clear that the select board had not seen them at its meeting last week. There are on the list as circulated, and you should have a copy, and I ask if you don't have one, make sure you get one. There are 58 changes that were suggested by our vendor, and they do such things as update the names of agencies. In my personal view, the changes that there were no, not clear what Tag was talking about on legal changes. I don't think there are any there. There are perhaps 3 or 4 that you might argue whether they are substantive. We removed the definition of family on the advice of town council, who quite accurately said there is no good definition of that. The MBTA bylaw, when talking about multi-unit dwellings, included in its definitions of both attached and unattached, that there would be a separate entry for each unit in the building. Picture that in a 12-unit building. We removed the idea that to qualify under the MBTA, there had to be a separate entrance. As we all know, the vast majority of buildings with multiple units, at least dwelling units, you go into a central hall and you go from there, but you go through one entrance. Those are the quote substantive changes that were made. But I suggest that you all carefully read the definitions. And I have sent to Tag, there were a lot of other things that we could have done that frankly we did not, because we wanted to err very much on the side of doing nothing more than as we were charged to reorganize, to get a table of uses as we had 25 years ago when I was actually, I forget whether I was chairing the zoning board at that stage or not, but I was certainly worked with the CISBIC group that, in my view, wrongly decided to take out that table. But carefully look at what there is and what needs to be done. You were planning as a second stage to actually step into making policy changes. There aren't any in the recodification as you have it at the moment. And I think one of the things you need to consider is, are you going to continue on the path of this very simple first step, or are you going to put the whole thing together? As the group talked about, reviewed this 10 or 15 years ago, talked about, and put together a completely new bylaw that takes care of all of the policy decisions that need to be made. For example, the use table, the uses in there date back to 1947. Businesses have changed. But the question of what your step is going to be is a very important one. Do you want to do this in 2 steps, or are you frankly going to bite the bullet and do the whole job?
I think, Jim, we want to continue with the 2 steps. I think this board would like some time to review the work that the working group has done and to actually have time to meet with you. We're feeling a little under the gun that we don't have enough time because we need to wrap up the warrant here fairly quickly.
There was actually a lot of pressure to get this done in town for this town meeting, and I think it became fairly clear to me, and I wouldn't be surprised if it became clear to a lot of members of the working group, that that was not going to be a target that would be met with an acceptable product.
Okay. All right, and we want to make sure that we have an acceptable product. So
I couldn't agree more. I've spent 2 solid years and hundreds of hours on this.
You have, yes, and we're very lucky. We're grateful too. Thank you. So do we need to vote as a group to go ahead and wait, or do we need to just agree to hold off on the codification?
I guess it would be good for it to be a vote just to make it official. I mean, I think because we have officially, the planning board has sort of officially submitted it to the select board, for this initial consideration, and it's on the the draft warrant, although I don't know if this draft warrant actually exists. I was told it was in it, but regardless, in any case, it's been received by them that the select board officially referred it back to the planning board. So yeah, I think so that I can then, probably tomorrow, I can go ahead and tell Rainey and Nancy O'Connor, like we're officially withdrawing it. I think, that'd be appropriate for the board to do that as a public hearing.
So we need a motion to withdraw the warrant article.
Yeah, I guess so.
Is it an actual warrant article?
All they've done at the moment is simply say that you can have hearings on it. I don't think it's on it would have to go to them to put onto the warrant, and that hasn't happened yet.
I think it's on the draft warrant, or it's certainly been submitted.
That's the draft.
So I would just, vote to either to withdraw from consideration or vote to pull the article back.
Well, can I ask a
The
procedural
verbiage probably
question?
matter that way.
Has the public hearing notice announcing public hearings gone out?
I don't think so. No, it hasn't.
So then that sounds appropriate.
So I'm thinking of this as a particular motion.
Sure.
Which is to move that the planning board direct the planning director to inform every person to whom he needs to, including the town administrators and the select board, that the planning board no longer intends to proceed with the recodification at this next annual town meeting, and let the planning director figure out how to deal with it from there.
Is that the motion?
That's the motion.
Sure. We have a second to that motion.
Second.
All right, any additional discussion? All right, let's call for a roll call vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, motion passed. Everyone pause and talk, go back to Ocean Road and then, okay. We're gonna pause the amendments, just the bylaws just for a second and go and talk with, since you raised up here from your car. Would you like to, introduce yourself, tell us where you are, where you live, and presumably, and then also tell us about what you're trying to do and what we can do to help.
My name is Carly Tobias. I work for Rockwood Design. I'm their director of operations, project manager, and I do our ZBA applications.
Okay.
Duxbury ZBA application is quite a hefty one. But that's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. And I don't know if I can comment on what was just discussed before, but I do agree on taking that in phases because I think it's been pushed on everybody quite fast, and it's hard even us as an architect firm to keep up with all the changes in every field, if it's engineering, civil engineer, and then what's happening with the state. But I am here to represent the Dalrymples on 23 Ocean Road South. We are raising their existing house to meet FEMA code. We are putting the house pretty much exactly back into the position that it's in on piles. And we are tearing off the decks and the rear deck and the front deck and rebuilding those in pretty much the exact location, except for the front deck. Instead of it being 22 by 8, we are making it 16 by 10, a enclosed sunroom porch, not heated. And that's what we're doing on this lot. It's a non-conforming lot with a non-conforming house. We're one of the very first to do it, and it's a very difficult lot because they have easements on it. It's one of the only lots on that street that has the amount of easements on it that it does.
I'm sorry, that has what?
That has the amount of easements on it that it does.
Okay.
You're not gonna really run into that with the other houses, but eventually all the other houses are gonna have to reach FEMA code. And the Dalrymples are the first to jump into the water and do that.
They're avoiding the water action.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. They are avoiding the water. Hopefully, if the seawall stays.
One thing I noticed was that on the application itself, somewhere, and I don't have it right here in front of me to be able to reference, but it said this is a non-conforming building on a conforming lot. And I think it actually was a typo.
It was a typo.
Yeah,
It's a
all
non-conforming,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a non-conforming house on a non-conforming lot. But we aren't changing the house at all. We're just lifting it up. The only thing they're gonna do to the house is reshingle it to meet, match the rest of the neighborhood.
Yeah, so we are here isn't in consulting capacity. We'll just advise or defer or recommend or not to the ZBA. So I appreciate you coming. I do have a question. This might be kind of a little out of the scope of this. For the FEMA, I thought that, do you need a town administrator to help you with this? I thought that there was, there was some discussion about that we actually needed to have, a local FEMA, coordinator from the municipality to help with that. So you might want to look into that because I'm not sure right now that we have that in town. Because it's come up before that we would love to, that's something that would certainly make sense and be beneficial to our residents.
Yeah,
So you might just double check that.
okay. Yeah, no, that's the first I've heard of this. I met with Jim Leslie's team multiple times, so that's the first I've heard of this.
Because it seems to me that Chris Ryan had always said a few years ago, and he said that we don't actually have somebody in town who's the efficient person.
You might be thinking maybe the floodplain administrator title perhaps.
Think about the actual, when it came time to raising as an RAIS. But anyway, so just maybe keep that in mind when you talk to your FEMA, to the regional FEMA contact, just maybe double check.
Okay,
In case you need it. So everybody wants you to do all this work and then not have somebody.
This isn't the first one, the FEMA floodplain
I would,
raising that has happened in town.
yeah, I did it to Mike Clifford's house, 2 houses over, but he was able to have a concrete foundation. And then the code change for engineers, over the summer that you no longer can have a grade beam in barrier beaches, so this house can only be put up on piles. Like I said,
I
the
actually
codes are
don't think it's the
changing.
first house on Pilot.
Yeah, it's not the first house on piles either. Maybe like in the front strip, but the houses behind, they're on piles.
Yeah.
Well, if you do find anything out that we can help you with, let us know, please.
Okay, absolutely.
Does the board have any questions, thoughts for the applicant? I'll entertain a motion to recommend, defer this to the ZBA.
So moved.
And yes, second,
Second.
and any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for a roll call vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, exceptions, passes. Good luck. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
See Wayne down there at ZBA later.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a great night.
Thanks, you too. All right, next up, let's go back to the zoning bylaw amendment. So we talked about recodification. Now we can talk about battery energy storage systems. I'm having such a hard time with this. And Amy's gone off camera. She could get some dinner or something like that, just like Jim is doing. Hey, yeah, they're rotating. We caught you both, sorry. All right, so Amy and Matthew and the board have been working on this. Jim is very kindly piped in, has been able to contribute as well. So we appreciate him joining us this evening. Has anybody on the board had a chance to review this? Any questions you might have?
I have reviewed it, and there were a couple of things that just jumped out at me, some of which are just completely consistent with Amy's comments.
Okay.
But I did not understand the waiver provision at all. This is a zoning bylaw change. I don't know what we'd be permitted to waive. At least my understanding is if we're going to not apply the zoning bylaw, people are going to have to apply for a variance. So I know that Amy's comment suggested we strike that. And I strongly recommend we strike it because even when I read it, I didn't know what it meant.
So it's not a good sign when that.
Yeah.
Understand it, okay. Thanks, Wayne. Any other thoughts?
The other comment that Amy had that I gave some thought to was the question about what do you do with proposed facilities that extend over 2 separate zoning districts. and that it's barred in one of the two. And my understanding, at least of the law, and then Amy will correct me if she often does, is that I think even the lead case on this suggests that you're just talking about access, that's probably not a reasonable restriction. I don't know that I'd be willing, or I'd be in favor of just striking the restriction. I think I would tweak it so that if what you're hoping to put on the property is part of the physical facility as opposed to access, then I wouldn't want to see part of the physical facility on a portion of the property that is not permitted under the bylaw to have it. That some of these things, you're going to be talking just simply about having to put two pieces of property together and get a sufficiently large property to comply with all the setbacks. Okay, and that's going to happen, and I'm not sure that I care very much about the access issue. And then, although I did say I only had one more, I actually had another one. I think 40 decibels at the lot line is too low. I do 40 decibels is basically how loud I am talking. The standards for damage to human health are much higher than that, and they're logarithmic. I would at minimum raise it to 50 decibels. But 60 decibels is perceived to be a loud conversation, and we're talking about a loud conversation at the lot line. But I don't think 40 decibels is a reasonable restriction.
We talked about that one in particular before, about whether it's 40 and 50. And I think, Amy, you were advising 40 might be a little too low as well, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Comments?
I should,
Go ahead.
sorry, I apologize, but I should probably clarify actually, because this is actually, I guess, largely my fault too. So actually, the weird thing is, when I wrote that line, that sentence up, if a site is located in more than one zoning district, blah, 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 in any of those zoning districts prohibits best, and best. So what my intended meaning wasn't like a site that's divided into two zoning districts, but actually a site that's in one zone and then it's also within an overlay. And so all I wanted to clarify there, which is, and I probably did it in a clumsy way or whatever, but what I was just trying to say is that, like, if it's allowed in the base zone, but then the overlay zone prohibits it, then it's prohibited. Which maybe you don't even need to say at all, because if you put an overlay, that kind of does it. But that was actually my intention. But I think as people read it, they interpreted it, as meaning a big property that's in two different, with a zoning line down the middle that's actually within two different zones. So I definitely, I defer to Amy's judgment, but also I agree with Amy that especially given, I guess, what happened with the Tracer decision, that it seems to make sense to that, like, if there's an act, if the best itself is within a zone where it's allowed, then it's appropriate that the access road to it, if the access road goes through another zone, then we shouldn't prohibit it, maybe for that reason. I don't know what, and then I'm not sure how we should phrase it properly from my original meaning, or if that even matters at all. Probably Amy can probably help us with this, since I kind of made a bit of a muddle of it.
But your original meaning, if all you're going to say is it was otherwise barred in the overlay zone, it was going to be barred anyway.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think there are a few spots in the zoning bylaws where there are those kinds of verbiage in there, but it may be unnecessary. Because, yeah, I think generally, if a site is within multiple zones, like a base zone and a few overlays or just one overlay. I believe if any of those zones say that a certain use is prohibited, then I think it is prohibited, regardless of whether some of the other zones say that it's allowed.
Yeah, my read of that and when I read it initially was I thought that the most likely outcome that would get you into more than one zone is that somebody would put more than one piece of property together so as to have a sufficiently large piece of property to comply with all setbacks. And that's the way I envisioned it. But
Yeah, I mean, I think I wrote it poorly.
well, that wasn't what I meant to suggest.
So then do we need that there? Because if it automatically has an overlay, then it's going to exclude one or the other.
And obviously anybody else's view on this is very much appreciated. But I really don't want to see some physical portion of the facility other than perhaps access and access to the whole, okay, you'll put a driveway in, I don't care. I wouldn't want to see any physical portion of the facility on any portion of the property that is otherwise not zoned for best.
Yeah, I agree, yeah. That just sort of intuitive, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, that's whether you need access through a different property, okay, you do that all the time. I've done it for years and years and years. But the notion that we're going to somehow bundle a couple of pieces of property together, one of them has the ability to put up one of these facilities, and the fact that I also own the thing next door and it's now part of this proposed application shouldn't empower you to drop a facility in a zone that doesn't otherwise permit it. That's my view.
I think just from a kind of a housekeeping point of view, because the warrant closes on January 26th, and so we have to get the final text of this to the select board and the town manager's office by then. And so the next planning board meeting, of course, is the same night, so it'll be too late by then. My hope, what I've told Randy and Nancy is I'll try to get it to them by the 23rd, in fact, so that they'll have kind of the weekend select board, so to review it. I think whatever changes we're going to make from this may be, it may be something where kind of the board can decide what the changes are right now, and then kind of give the chair, give Kristen and me and Amy kind of the ability to actually make those changes and kind of decide on what the final verbiage will be for those. Because I mean, obviously, ideally, it'd be nice to be able to bring it back to the planning board and have the final version, but it seems like we don't have time to do that.
Kristen, do you mind if I ask Amy a question?
No, please ask Amy away, absolutely.
Amy, is there an easy way to draft what you fully understand I'm trying to get at here?
Yes, I do. So what you're saying is that the actual facility itself has to be in a zone that allows for the facility. However, setbacks can be used. For example, setbacks in a residential district can be used. So if the property consists of more than one zoning district, the facility has to be in the area that it's allowed. However, the applicant can use the rest of the lot for setbacks.
Setback or access?
Or access, correct. Yep. And
Yeah.
I can make a revision that would, it would be something along the lines of at the end of that where it says any of those zoning districts prohibits best, then bests are prohibited at that site. This does not apply to setbacks and or access. Something as easy as that. We can do that.
I'm on board with that.
Other thoughts about any of the language that's in there as it is right now? From the board. Matt, do you have anything you wanted to call out?
No, I think Wayne brought up one that I saw, that the waivers, as Amy correctly pointed out, should be struck. Doesn't seem to be applicable, so why have it in that?
What about the limit, the number of, we say the word, say it incorrectly, but the wattage, kilowattage, I think.
Yes, I had a question about that myself, yeah. Yeah, I can jump right in, sure. So I'm looking at 622.3 applicability. And there's language in here that says that best fit does not have a storage capacity of 100 kilowatt hours are not subject to this bylaw and are allowed by right in all zoning districts. So I was thinking of that, and so if it doesn't have a storage capacity of that exact kilowatt hourage, is that a word? I don't know. Then it would be permitted by right. I was thinking, should that instead be reading 100 kilowatt hours or fewer?
Yeah, or at a minimum.
Yes, yeah, I think there should be just strictly 100 kilowatt hours. It should be kilowatt hours or less, I would think. And that's how that should be.
Amy, does that make sense?
So that would be under B, correct? And it would say, best that does not exceed the threshold capacities above are not subject to this bylaw and are allowed by right in all zoning districts. So you want me to change that to, best that are, I guess it would be 100 kilowatts or less, correct?
Kilowatt hours or less.
Kilowatt hours or less, yeah, okay. Okay, yep, I can change that.
Jim, did you want to say something on this?
I'd like to just make, actually, I have 3 or 4 things to raise. First, I just wanted to, I think I heard Matt say that the warrant closes, what did you say, 28th or 29th of January?
Yeah, the 20.
But am I correct that your public hearing is not scheduled until February?
That's correct.
Isn't there a minor, how do you deal with that one?
It's actually fairly common. It happens a lot.
No,
Sometimes
but on the assumption that the public hearing might result in changes. I'm just raising the question. People got to figure out how to deal with that.
So, Mr. Lambert, normally how we deal with that when there's a change during the 48 Section 5 public hearing and the warrant has already been posted, if the changes are straightforward enough that we can actually deal with them through the motion, we can do it that way. So the motion will state the changes. Sometimes we actually do have to have the planning board make the motion to amend the article on town meeting floor. So that would
And I said one other way to do it is we've all seen that the warrant doesn't really close on that date.
Correct. Correct.
It never really happens.
It's an idle threat. Yes.
Right. There often things change after.
Yeah. I agreed.
Second point I wanted to raise is I sent Matt and Amy, actually I did send Amy, also Kristen, over the weekend, a memo on just thoughts on this bylaw. One of the things the selectmen were clearly uncomfortable with at their meeting was having these things in planned developments, which are the densest residential areas that we have. That was just one of the questions I think clearly needs to be thought about. Wayne touched on a second one, is that there are a lot of homes that have their own storage units. Most of those will probably be under the 100 kilowatt hours, but particularly if homes decide to work together, et cetera, you could rapidly approach that. So another question that was raised in a memo that Matt circulated to you sometime today, and I frankly doubt anybody's had time to read it, was how do you deal with what I would call a BESS that is clearly accessory as we talk about accessory uses to a dwelling, single or multi-family dwelling, or for that matter, to a business. If you look, for example, at Hall's Corner or Millbrook, there are single buildings with multiple businesses in them. What do you want to do about having or permitting those people to have best units for them, which they may want to do because frankly, they're central if you want to have anything approaching a solar energy or solar energy storage. But the memo that I hope you'll have time to read raises 2 or 3 questions on, and it's Amy, their other Amy pointed out in an email today, they're all policy questions, but I think they all do need to be considered. And board has some time to think about them, and I'd be perfectly willing to talk to the board or anybody else about them in more detail later. They're not easy ones to answer. So this is at a much considerably higher level than I think the items that planning board members have talked about tonight. This is basically fundamental policies on, do you want these in residential areas? What are you going to do about accessory uses? And how, frankly, might you put this together in a way that best protects the residents of the town, recognizing that the AG might or might not go along with you. You really don't know one way or the other until it gets there. And what might your escape be if for some reason the AG doesn't agree with you? Please take a look at the memo and let's talk about it sometime.
Well, I think the accessory use question that Jim raised is a really good one. And in terms of the policy question, I read this draft to reflect a policy. I read this draft to limit these uses to places where they were very unlikely to be built. And I know that the proposal was to strike the neighborhood business districts as well. You're not going to be able to put up one of these facilities in any one of our neighborhood business districts.
Except perhaps across the street from the Windsor House. That's a large piece of property.
Which is subject to, which may or may not be even subject to zoning, Joe. Because of its agricultural use. By and large, I thought that this bylaw reflected a policy choice, which was, by and large, we prefer not to have these. And we would like to see them limited in such a way that we will comply with what we perceive to be the law, but we will do it in such a way that the likelihood of development in the town of Duxbury is low. And that was the policy choice I thought we were making.
Yes, I guess, Wayne, I completely agree with my successor as zoning board chair on this one. That basically, I think that is what we want to do. And the issue to me is a matter of policy and is a matter, frankly, of rolling some dice on what the hell the AG might want to do. What's the best way to ensure that that goal is accomplished?
If I might, can I enter this discussion at this point? My name is Wendell Cerny. I'm the chair of the Alternative Energy Committee. This discussion of BESS is quite important to the committee in that we realize that any adoption of renewables, which are intermittent, is going to require supply. I am not speaking for the committee here, but I am saying that what needs to happen is that it seems that this planning board needs a little information on the other side as to the safety of BESS and their desirability, and that they're part of the Commonwealth's plan to move us to net zero by 2050. I do not like a strategy where we are trying to sidestep and eliminate the use of battery storage. So I don't know what technical information you folks have been receiving about the safety of battery storage units. And I think that needs to happen.
All right, thank you, Wendell. We haven't opened our public comments yet. Jim has been an advisor on this topic, so that's why I invited him to speak. So if you could give us a few minutes, we'd like to circle back around with you on that. We haven't heard from Tag yet. Would you like to give some comments you'd like to share, Tag?
Yeah, I do, and I wonder how much detail we really want to get into since we've elevated the discussion to policy, and I'm almost at the syntax level. But let me at least make the points, and maybe I can follow up with Matt and Amy. The first thing I noticed is that in the definitions section under dedicated use building, we launch immediately into regulatory requirements. This is bad practice, and it should be corrected. And as I read it, there are some requirements that relate to the building that belong in 622.5 on page 4. And then there are some additional requirements that relate to safety, which belong in 622.9 on page 10. If we don't make these changes, it makes it harder to understand and implement. Maybe that's what we want, but I wanted to point that out. Further, I question on page 3 and 622.3. why we have under applicability and excluding general maintenance and repair. We're giving them a pass to the zoning on general maintenance and repair. Why are we doing that? Is that important? Can we strike that? I have a note on 622.5B that it's muddy, but it's been revised, so it's maybe not apply, but it seemed like we had a couple of different targets and then a couple of different rules, and it wasn't clear to me which target applied to which rule, or which rule applied to which target. Another comment I'll make very quickly is that we define a term for the battery energy system management system. And then this term is only used once in the document, and it has to do with the emergency operations plan and notification. This seems unnecessarily detailed, and I'd like to scrub that out. If anything, we should simplify this in my view. And this led me to an observation about this section, 622.7, which includes administrative site plan review. And I was struck by the fact that under administrative site plan review, we have, I didn't count them, but 3 pages. And at the very last item, X, it says, and the site plan will identify where the facility is on the parcel. And as I read it, that is actually the only site plan component. Everything else is operational, procedural, documentation. So I understand that, site plan review is kind of the only tool we have, but it's heavily overloaded with a lot of non-site plan information. So I just question whether that's actually an effective way to do that. Maybe it's just a structural issue. And that's as far as I got. There's quite a bit in there.
That's a comment.
I don't, so with respect to the maintenance and repair, I mean, what do you mean we gave him a pass on maintenance and repair?
Well, it's excluded from the bond.
If you put up a facility, you gotta be able to maintain and repair it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Tag, all it's saying is that, I think what it probably means is that, like if somebody just needs to maintain or repair their vests, they don't have to submit a new application under the zoning bylaws for like a new, administrative site plan review or whatever. I think that kind of, I mean, Amy can correct me, but I think that's probably what it means. Because people, like with any building or structure, we do have to allow people to do basic general maintenance or repair on all sorts of
I
things.
don't see anything.
They can't go before the planning board every time they do
No,
that.
that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm just saying, it seems as if we're saying that if you maintain the system, you can do it outside of the parameters of the bylaw. That's what I'm objecting to.
Do you want to take those one by one, Tag, or did I'm gonna?
Again, if we're not, I don't want to use a whole bunch of time in this committee meeting to go through nitpicking. So if it's very on the policy discussion, I think it's worth diving into. If it's a matter of drafting, I mean, satisfied with Matt and Amy. Unless anybody here wants to really engage in these.
Just from that, well, do we want to talk about any other comments as it stands? We're going to talk a little bit about policy.
No, I did talk about policy. I understood this policy in a particular way, and that may or may not be the policy that the rest of the town of Duxbury wants to engage in. But I understood the policy to largely suggest that we're not going to make this easy.
I think, does anybody else have any comments that they'd like to make on that? And from the board right now?
I guess just in looking at the proposed map where best would be allowed. You know, to the extent that we're looking to restrict or minimize the possibility of best being placed anywhere in the town of Duxbury. There's an awful lot of color on this map that shows where these things can be placed and where they could be, where they could be located by right. Not with any kind of special permit.
No, I think it's all special permit. I think the whole thing is
It's all
special.
special, but point being, we're designating areas where these things can be.
Correct, yeah.
And to the extent that we're doing that, there's an awful lot of, as I say, there's an awful lot of color on here. And it seems to me like we could be doing more to restrict where these things can be located than we're doing here. But at the same time, we have to balance that with what the state would expect of us with regard to the amount of land in town that we would be allocating to this particular use. So obviously, those are the two opposing priorities that we have here.
So, Steve, I fully understand your point about there's an awful lot of color. And when I saw the map initially, that was my immediate reaction. And then I started to think granularly as to where these green things are. And I can't tell you, I've been here a long time, but I can't tell you I know where all of this stuff is. But a lot of this stuff is never get developed. Goose Point Lane, not gonna, right?
And also just to clarify, I mean, the colors do kind of pop out, but it only comes to about 9. Well, I should give Emily credit for the map and for the calculations, since she has more GIS expertise than I do. But it comes to about 9.7% of the town. And if we eliminate the 3 business districts, then it drops to about 9.1%, I believe. So it's a pretty small percentage. And I think if we go any lower, certainly if we went below 5%, we'd kind of be in danger with the tracer decision. And, town council can say more about that, but we do have to kind of be aware of the reality that, we can't go too low or we can't make it too difficult. But at the same time, obviously, there's a lot of people in town who want to minimize it. And so we're just kind of stuck. And then, of course, we've got a few people like Wendell Cherniak who are pointing out that this actually serves a good purpose for sustainability. So I think it's just something we kind of have to balance. And I think there are no easy answers. I mean, it's really hard because Duxbury, between the RC district and the 3 PD districts, all of which essentially are residential, regardless of whether you call them PD or what, they're basically they're mainly residential. That's about 98% of Duxbury, and then the 3 business zones are only about 6%, and then the dunes protection zone is maybe 1 or 2%. So really, Duxbury is zoned about 98% residential, assuming that you regard the PD zones as residential. So, which in practice they basically are. So it's just, and I think I kind of said the same thing to the select board. So these are like really difficult decisions, and there's no easy right answer. I think it's just really hard.
Any other thoughts before we open it to public? You look like you're about to say something right now.
No, I mean, it's quite obvious from this map that we put most of the areas that are permissible next to Marshfield or Pembroke or Kingston.
So I mean, I can actually explain exactly where it comes from. That wasn't the intention, it wasn't my intention. So basically, it allows the proposal, or at least where the map comes from, is to allow BES in the 3 planned development zones, and at least on that map, in the 3 business zones. The map suggests to take the right. So it's the 3 PD zones, the 3 business zones, and then it's prohibited in all the other base zones, which of course is mainly RC, and also it's prohibited in the aquifer overlay, the flood hazard areas overlay, the wetlands overlay, and maybe I think the scenic waterfront overlay, whatever it's called. And so, you know, the aquifer, in particular, the aquifer overlay is like a big chunk right in the center of the town. And so that's probably, I think, why it kind of what remains is sort of more on the edges. But anyway, that's actually where it comes from. And then again, you know, Emily had more GIS expertise to actually get it to do the map and calculate it correctly. But that's kind of what it derives from. And it's interesting that it wound up going a little more on the edges and so forth. But that's what it's doing.
What happens if we take the PDs out?
Well, then you'd only have about 0.6% left. So I think you'd be definitely running afoul of the tracer decision.
I'm personally,
Question that.
I'm personally less concerned that anybody's going to put one of these facilities up in one of the business districts. I just don't. They're too small to begin with. They're already developed. It just seems unlikely to me, and to the extent that they're going to do it, they're going to do it in support of whatever business that's already there. So when, and I know there was pushback, but I was not fully in favor of striking the business districts from the zone. Because I thought those were among the least likely places that this would ever get developed.
What percent was that?
I think it's just 0.6% is our 3 business zones. So it's
which 3 business zones are we talking about?
I think it's business light, business 1, and business 2, I believe. I don't know what they're actually referring to.
Yeah, you're talking Hall's Corner, Millbrook, and Paxton.
Basically, yeah, a few other spots too.
Right.
But would those make more sense than any residential?
I think the problem is it's such a small, it's only 0.6% of the town. So frankly, I think it doesn't matter that much whether we include them or not. And considering that I've gotten some kind of feedback from a few members of the public who feel like they want to strike it, I figured, hey, why not? You know, it's true. I mean, I agree with Wayne. It seems extremely unlikely that they'd actually be built in one of those zones for all the reasons that Wayne gives. But just to kind of reassure people, it might be nice to prohibit them, and we're only talking 0.6. But I mean, it is kind of funny because on the one hand, I've gotten feedback from some people that say we don't want this in the denser areas, and other people say we really don't want this in our rural or residential areas. So it's, in a sense, it's kind of like the pressure coming from both ends, in a sense, which is understandable. But again, I think it just underlines how this is sort of a difficult decision.
Any other thoughts before we open it up to the public?
Madam Chair, just one more thought here. And Jim, you were ready to jump in, and in the email that we had gotten shortly before the meeting, I kind of skimmed through that. And I know that you had touched a little bit on the tracer decision and how how that might apply here. So I was hoping that you might comment on that briefly before we open it up to the public here.
Yeah, basically, tracer was a fairly interesting case. The best unit was in Lexington.
It was actually solar. It was a solar array.
Whatever.
Yeah.
It was basically this was going to be a Lexington facility. The only thing that Waltham had they wanted to use, because Waltham was an easier way to put a road to get to it. And the Waltham zoning board, I believe, said that you can't put the road there because it's in a residential district. Well, the court decided that the road was part of the BES, which permitted them to invoke a state law that says you can prohibit this only if it's going to cause, I'm going to paraphrase slightly, real damage or real risks of damage. Waltham clearly could not possibly have shown that the road itself was going to cause any damage to anybody in Waltham. I never heard anybody in Lexington complaining about the facility. Let's compare that to our situation here. Here in Duxbury, we're talking about the BES systems themselves. My understanding is that a typical commercial BES system requires somewhere between 1 and about 5 acres. We have in Duxbury, oh, pause a second. This conversation is proceeded on the thought that, oh God, all BES systems are automatically bad and we don't want them anywhere within 1,000 miles, to be slightly overstating. The Alternative Energy Committee raised a point that that may not be the right decision. These things might be quite necessary and quite useful to the town as we move forward. We've got an awful lot of open space in town. It would not be difficult, I don't think, to draft a bylaw that said something akin to, it's got to be on a 5-acre lot. You have to provide a significant, in which there are no residential areas. You've got to provide a buffer, pick your distance, I don't care, 200, 500 feet, between this lot and any residential areas. That gets you away from the problems that Matt's pointed about, oh, what the hell is a percentage and the decision. But there are other ways to look at this thing. And I think the board needs to do so, and they need to do so in conjunction with how the Alternative Energy Group feels what is necessary for the town. On the decision itself, the Traver decision, it's really hard to say that it would forbid us from drawing a line that says we're not going to allow these where they raise a risk to residential structures, because that simply wasn't an issue there.
It's difficult for me to contemplate that there are multiple 5-acre lots that are not in residential compatibility districts.
Well, I agree that these would be, Wayne. They just wouldn't be near any residences.
Right. It's just so much of this, when you get to 5-acre lots in Duxbury, you're talking about conservation. I get it, and I fully acknowledge that this is a policy decision. And frankly, policy evolves. And if you've chosen the wrong policy in the first instance, you can choose a better policy going forward. And it is a policy decision. My perception, given the best applications that have come before this board, is that there is widespread concern, fear about these projects. And I take that because you can only, the people who show up are the people who care, right? That's always been the rule on policy. If you have a horse in the race, you show up. But it's been a very difficult issue in this town, including litigation that it's just been resolved about where you put these things. And I much prefer to come up with person as a policy matter, irrespective of the fact that I acknowledge that over time, this policy might be infirm or improved. I'd much prefer to limit the scope of where these go. And that's my policy view.
Anyone else from the board? All right, are we going to open it up to the public?
Well, I just want to raise a counterpoint. I don't think open up the debate too much on the map. I think this focus on, I mean, it seems like the Tracer decision is a red herring, frankly. And this thing about having parcels scattered all over town, I mean, from a practical perspective, these are grid connected systems. So, you know, having a zoning map that says you can put it a mile from a power line is, I mean, it might serve our interest, but it's kind of nonsense. If your objective is to support the state's policy, the Commonwealth's policy, to you know, reinforce the AEC's position. You know, we're not really the guinea pig here. These things are being put out all over the country, and yes, there are concerns, and there is a finite risk of a runaway conflagration that we're all deeply concerned about. But I think, you know, if we're, you know, when you put this map together, just to speak candidly, you're putting out a menu. You know, here's all the places you could try. Go ahead and take a look, see where you can stuff on it. So by doing so, any resident who butts any one of these green spots may have a reasonable objection. Why are you targeting? We saw this with MBTA.
Yeah.
I'm very concerned about that. What are we doing here? We're lighting a fuse. Would it make more sense to simply identify the existing utility corridors and lay out an area proximate to those corridors, and then have an exclusion, perhaps, you know, for aquifer or certain things that we do want to certainly protect in those areas, but to make it so that it's clear we are trying to be consistent with the objective and the policy, and we are protecting our residents' interests. Just be clear about it instead of playing games. That's my thought. I hate, sorry to, you know, muddy the water or stir the pot, but I felt I needed to say this.
But that doesn't muddy the water, but I'm gonna be candid with you. I don't care about the Tracer decision. What I care about is that this town litigated and lost. It's one effort to regulate these things. And yes, that thing has now been resolved in a way that is reasonable. But we litigated it, we lost it in land court. It went up on appeal, it never got resolved on appeal, it in fact got settled. But the precedent that is closest to what I understand is that we try to regulate one of these things in a very close residential district and got slapped down hard. And I don't want to do that again. I want to regulate it affirmatively.
Any other thoughts? We'll move on to the public here. All right, open up for public comments. I'm guessing you have something you'd like to say.
Just a couple of things.
Wild guess.
So first, you what?
Remind me who you are.
Oh, yes, Kim McEntee from Rosewood. So first thing I just wanted to add to the conversation is that even if you look on these energy websites, they clearly state that they are looking for not residential, but industrial, commercial locations to put their product. Okay, it says it clearly. So that's part of that, like, what are we doing here kind of thing. That's where they said they were going, but they ended up in somebody's backyard 40 feet from your door. So how did that happen? You know what I mean? So anyway, that's just a comment or a thought. That's kind of why we're here. I think perhaps the gentleman that spoke earlier, I don't think anybody is against green energy, it's really placement, it's safe placement of this opportunity. So the other thing I wanted to throw out was about the noise and just offer a suggestion that we've been talking about numbers and so the state in any situation, they do not have a single maximum dB number that applies to all noise sources in anything, BESS or anything. So what they do, and it's just something to think about, the policy interpretation, practice, especially in industrial and facility, they say a sound source is considered in violation if it increases sound levels by more than 10 decibels above ambient conditions. So rather than picking a 40 or picking a 50 or like kind of struggling with that because we don't want to be thrown up by the, Attorney General, but they're saying no more than 10 decibels above ambient conditions at the property line or at the nearest sensitive receptor. That's Massachusetts law, not pertaining specifically to this. But anyway, just thinking that might be more helpful. So they take a measurement before and it can't be more than 10. And so that's it. Just wanted to throw that out. Maybe that's helpful.
Thank you. Anything else from the public here?
Can I ask a question? Because I really like that idea.
Thank God.
But where'd you get it? What, there's a CMR, where'd you get it?
Where did you just on this? We kind of chat GPT'd it. And it says, in Massachusetts law, what is the maximum sound for best storage devices? And then it gives you all of this, there is no maximum actual number. And then it goes on to clarify, there's no number associated with anything. It's the difference between your natural habitat and 10. So,
because the decibel thing is exponential, you're not talking about a very small change in volume when you go up 10 decibels.
but that's what they're.
I know that's so. All questions of this nature that I ever ask go to Amy.
Yes, there she is.
She's ready.
Amy, can we do that?
So there's a couple reasons why, in my opinion, that's problematic, which the first is, how do you measure ambient? Who measures ambient? When is it measured? It sounds fine on paper, but it's almost impossible to enforce because, first of all, that is a DEP standard and DEP has the equipment. We don't have the equipment to measure sound in towns. Most towns do not own the equipment. If we do own the equipment, very few employees are certified on the equipment, et cetera. So it's something we can put in, but I just don't know how we would ever enforce it.
Well, let me make a suggestion as to how to enforce it. As part of the site plan review, you require the applicant to come in and use the equipment, whatever it is, and get you a baseline number.
Sure, we can get a baseline number. That's not a problem. Usually with, so for example, in my Norton case that has the dual use solar with the BESS system associated with it, the conditions are that they have to do a noise study. They have to come up with all of the baselines. The question is, when there's a suspected violation of the 10 dBd over, how do we determine that? And again, I'm not saying it can't be in the bylaw. I'm sure it can be in the bylaw. We would just have to be very creative when we're drafting the special permit and we're drafting conditions of the special permit. We would have to, for example, I guess we could say if there's a complaint, the building commissioner has the authority to and the discretion to order the applicant or order the owner or operator to submit a sound study or something like that. But again, it's not something where Jim Wazalewski can just, jump in his car and go out there and measure the sound. It's not possible usually.
Okay, but I'm gonna back it up for a second. If we put it at 50 dB, how are we gonna measure that?
Well, that could be done by the applicant would have to, with their sound study, they would, if their operations are over 50 at the lot line, then they're over 50. That's
Right.
that's a given.
But let's assume that the ambient noise is 36. Right?
Yep.
That's high.
How are we gonna know whether it's 46 or 50? If you say if nobody has the equipment to measure, the notion that if we put it at 50 becomes just as arbitrary as if we said you can only be 10 over the ambient noise level.
So in their sound studies, they have to submit a sound study that is, a certified sound study that actually this is the level at these certain points along the property. And so if we want to do 50 dB at the property line, they have to be able to operate at 50 dB at the property line. If they can't, then the sound study is going to show that they can't.
But presumably, okay, they do a sound study, but I know that this doesn't happen a lot, but it happens enough that it concerns me that people often ask forgiveness rather than permission.
Can I take this to a logical conclusion?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we're talking about a mechanism.
Yes.
Mechanism of law that is not supported by any mechanical device. If we wanted to be able to enforce a sound level bylaw, it's a form of pollution. We would have to monitor the pollution. And if the pollution exceeded the level, then the monitoring system would tell us, and then we would enforce. It's not something that can be done by hand or arbitrarily or on demand. It just isn't. So is that something, Amy, that we can do? Can we place in the bylaw a requirement that there be sound pollution monitoring with a threshold and a notification, just like we do with the fire detection?
Yes, we'd have to figure out a way to make that possible. That could be, yes, I mean, that is subject to challenge by the AG. It's also subject to challenge by an operator, I would say.
Given everything is subject to challenge, yes, we know.
How much are these decibel readers, these sound readers? Or is this like a $500?
You're talking about a microphone and amplifier, and I mean, I can build one for $5. So it's not, the thing is not the technology, it's the implementation and the operation, and the maintenance and the response. That's where the expense
So
is.
couldn't we just and employ our?
Well, again, now what are we doing? We're putting expenses on the town
Yes.
to mitigate the harm of an industrial use in a residential area. It doesn't make any sense to me. If it's something that the town needs the provider to handle, then we should make it a requirement that the provider handle it.
I guess I'd be wary of putting in requirements or doing things that are different from what's, and this might be kind of a boring thing to say, but requirements of stuff that are different from what conventional zoning bylaws usually have. And I think maybe this is kind of what Amy may have been sort of implying, although I know I shouldn't speak for her, but like ordinarily zoning bylaws typically don't have, they have requirements about, this is the maximum dB that your operation, your facility can make at the property boundary. They typically don't have, requirements about how a certain property owner after developer has to set up a noise monitoring system to verify that. So I guess I would just be very cautious about that kind
We appreciate that. That's more of a building code type of a requirement rather than something.
Maybe I think it's maybe just something where you can't. It's generally not something that one imposes that sort of thing, that sort of extensive actual, measuring noise on on every single person who's doing a particular project, whether it's a factory or even just a restaurant or retail or that sort of thing.
Well,
But
yeah, I'm
certainly-
gonna push back, Matt, because you're saying we really shouldn't deviate from business as usual. This is not business as usual. This is an industrial application in a residential area. Therefore, in order to protect our residents' interests, we may have to color outside the lines, because I don't know that anybody has done industrial applications in residential areas. And if they have, they may have done it in places where people didn't have the wherewithal to enforce their rights. So.
Well, I think it's also important to remember there are no industrial zones in Duxbury.
We're having a challenge here. So we
Oh,
have
yes.
industrial areas.
That is the challenge, Madam Chairman. You're right. That is the challenge. There is no commercial there's business, but there's no real commercial or industrial zoned districts in town. So that's the bulk of the problem here.
But and candidly, I don't see that as a problem. This town is developed in a particular way that does not have industrial uses. It does not have heavy commercial uses. To the extent that we're ever going to characterize that as a problem, I'm going to disagree with it adamantly. This is a town that has developed in a particular way and for a very, very long time. And the fact that we don't have industrial zones is problematic only from the perspective that people are trying to jam industrial uses
Yes.
into our town.
Exactly my point.
Yes,
So.
yes. So it's very similar to the MBTA that they're trying to, the state's coming and asking us to zone things we haven't developed for. So what I'm not saying is a problem, it's more that if we had a large industrial space, we would be able to say, here, this makes sense, it's a perfect place to zone for this. We don't have that. So that's why it's a challenge to us sitting here today, is to make sure that we have some zoning that's maybe not natural to.
That is my point, Madam Chairman. There is no zone that we can just plop this down over.
So Amy, do you think, does Tracer still apply to I know this might be impossible to answer, but does Tracer decision still apply to a town like Duxbury that is, zoned 98% residential, that has no industrial zones at all? Do you think the AG or a judge would kind of look at Duxbury differently for that reason than they did for Waltham?
No, because we have town specific case law that says that no, they won't. So as Wayne mentioned, we lost the New Leaf case in land court.
Yeah.
In Duxbury.
I'm trying to thread the needle here and identify a strategy that we can invoke and which is within the interest of the residents and supports the policy of the Commonwealth to distribute these things widely for a more resilient and responsive grid. But anticipate, because just to go through the thought experiment, these are, big metal boxes with giant fans on them that blow all the time. If you run a fan all the time, its noise will gradually increase over the years as the bearings wear. So even if you're under 50 when you install it, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years later, they're going to go up 55, 60. At what point does the resident finally say, I've had enough? At what point do we identify that there's been a taking, that the resident's property value has been diminished? These are all real issues.
They are. So we're trying to set a standard, but we also need to be reinforced. Anything else from the board before?
I'd be very interested to see what Mark has to say.
I think Tag had a really good idea, and I'm gonna give you an example. Just, if we can't make gravity work when we design a septic system, then we have to go to a pump chamber. And one of the requirements of the pump chamber is that there's got to be an audible and a visible alarm. Okay, so obviously maybe that's not going to be the case here, but you could obviously make a requirement, okay, that there has to be constant monitoring 24/7 and a report generated. It could be monthly, it could be every 2 months. Okay. It's got to go to town hall, it's got to go to the building inspector's office. Unfortunately, I guess Jim and Bob more to do, but they can take a look at it. Or maybe it could be the Board of Health. Okay. Take a look at it. And if there's an issue, then they have to approach the owner of the facility and get it rectified immediately, if not sooner.
I think that's kind of what you were thinking. I think that's kind of what you had in mind.
Thank you.
Some type of a constant reporting system.
Yeah, I'm fully in favor of what Tag suggested. The fact that it might not be as clear cut as some of the, it's 50 dB. I love it. What happens with zoning in this town is that when people exceed what they are supposed to do, then they have to go and complain. And then they have to go and try to get Jim or many of our other very good public servants to try to then go enforce. And then the enforcement process is not straightforward. And to the extent that we can put in a self-effectuating standard that says, you got to report to us on if you go over 50 dB or if you go over 10 dB over the background, then at least you have a document that you can go to the court with and say, hey, that they're not complying. But I mean, literally, we've had issues in this town where people thumb their nose at the zoning book bylaw. And then we go through the entire enforcement process. And the judge says, well, that's hearsay. And I don't want to have a law that's toothless.
So then if we had the reporting, that would be data. And if we could take that and say, if you don't meet this threshold, exceed or limit to whichever.
It's data, and candidly, it's not hearsay because it's an admission against interest.
Objective threshold.
And what is the
Then the zoning enforcement officer can go to court and get it enforced.
they must seasonal operations at that point?
He can do a cease and desist order.
Include fines.
Yeah.
I mean, is that something that would be reasonable, do you think?
Yeah, I would say it is, but I can't tell you what the Attorney General would do. But put it in and then just see, if they strike that section, they strike that section. But I don't see any reason why we wouldn't put it in and try.
So what?
Yeah. That's
What are we putting? Are we putting in a section that it says it can't go more than 10 dB above ambient?
I was hoping Tag was going to write something up.
Well, I just stepped in it, didn't I?
I like 10 dB above ambient at the time of application.
Application.
Analysis is still the same. You're still setting a benchmark.
Right.
Well, all right, since you've asked me to try and break this open, I think we're gonna run up against the issue of attribution. Sound is sound, it travels in all directions, so even if you have a monitoring system in place that says, hey, it got noisy over here, how are we gonna positively attribute that to the battery energy storage system?
Because one random spike or a couple of random spikes is never gonna matter.
Right?
It's gonna
Okay,
be
so there's
persistent
The
activity
level and
above
the
threshold.
duration threshold, yeah, all right.
I guess I would suggest, if we put that verbiage in, maybe also have it be sort of like an and thing where like we impose that, but we also set a maximum just to protect ourselves, set a maximum of like 45 or 50 dB so that we're not,
Yep.
someone doesn't find a loophole in that.
Right, so it's 10 over threshold, not to exceed 55
Yeah.
or 50, something. 40 is too low. I was checking the level of this conversation on my cell phone.
Yeah.
We're exceeding 40.
Yes. Yes, sure. Hold on a second. Did you want to just finish?
I just wanted to throw another thing this is very good in the sense that there was on the West Coast and we were trying to figure out what city it was in, but just to give you the example, that they had started out with certain equipment, the cooling system failed,
Yeah.
and they needed to bring in diesel engines
That's right,
to
generators,
cool
that's what
the
that's.
things. So now, what they started with was certainly not what they ended up with, and now they've got this crazy noise that nobody thought to regulate or watch or, document. And so they were stuck. They had nowhere to go with that. They were like, well, that's what we gotta do to keep this thing cool. So anyway, it's a lovely thing you're having.
So Peg, does the noise have to persist for a certain amount of time to rise to the level?
There's
Of a
already
violation.
standards out there for average exposure, average over time, so you can window it, things like that. All can.
All right, I think we haven't heard from Wendell. Wendell, would you like to, you've got the floor?
Yes, a couple of preliminary things. Number one, what I'm representing here is not a problem here is that this discussion, our movement toward developing best regulations, actually communication should have been better, meaning that it would have been great to reach out to the AEC, and it's just a problem in town. Let's face it, there's just not good communication between boards and committees. And we have in the AEC, we have people who work in this field, they're experts in this field, but this never came to our attention, I would say, in a timely fashion. So that's a problem. The other thing that I have to say is, I don't really think that we should be making decisions as to the way the town should proceed if we're basing it upon fear, not facts. That's not a good thing. And if we say, well, fear is going to bring people out to meetings and make decisions, that's not a good thing. We should be educating people as to the actual perceived dangers or safety of these systems. Let's face it, we assume a heck of a lot of risk. How many of us have gas pipelines going down our streets? How many of us are driving vehicles with explosive fluids? So it's a risk. The other thing that seems to be happening here is that we're talking about industrial, and I know that the New Leaf experience was difficult, where you had industrial size best, but now are we also saying that, let's say a group of neighbors decide, you know what, we want to share a solar system, and we want to have battery storage so that in case of a power outage, we can, for a couple of days, our houses can still have power. So does this mean that by the zoning decision that those will not be allowed? Or if, for example, and this is not an actual project, let's imagine that with the new DPW building, this is not happening right now, but let's imagine that we had the idea in town, we're going to have solar and we're going to have battery backup. What if we decide we're going to have solar canopies at the senior center and have battery backup so that the senior center can serve as a safe location in case of emergencies? The same thing with the schools. So are we saying that all of these BESS are the same size and that they require an acre or 5 acres? I just think that there's just not the kind of knowledge that's required here to make a good decision. And as far as decibels go, geez, I wish we could apply this to leaf blowers. That's all I have to say. 110 decibels. That's all. So that I just think I am sorry to arrive so late on the scene here, where I really think that a good amount of information would be really important to have about the safety of the International Space Station. My gosh, what do they have? What do they have for? They have solar and lithium storage batteries aboard. I mean, there it is. So I'm not going to say there's not concerns about them, because there are accidents happen, but take a look at the constant leaks from gas lines throughout this country. Those are risks. Those are risks that we take. So so what I would suggest is, I don't know what kind of schedule they're on, but if somehow we, the AEC, could make a presentation, about the size of a BESS that we need for like a microgrid, and just the overall safety records of for the storage batteries. I think that would be beneficial. And I would hate to have people in town say, and I think that this actually came up in discussion, well, geez, can I have a battery wall? Can I have a Tesla battery wall? Yes or no? Because right now, I'm not clear if that would be allowed or not. So again, I'm just suggesting that the AEC come to a meeting and discuss this. Or if you feel that it would be better off and you're on a tight schedule, in an open meeting, I mean, that would be fine too. So that's about it.
Yeah, so Wendell, thank you very much. And you brought up a good point. I'm sorry that we didn't think to reach out. I think we've just had our heads down on so many other things. We do have a meeting on January 26th. And I would welcome your committee to come and speak with us about this, because we've actually had concerned citizens, and they've been to a number of meetings, and they've actually been very helpful and provided some insight.
Yes.
So that would be great.
Madam Chair, if I may, just real quickly, there is, I did want to just draw everyone's attention to Chapter 239 of the Acts of 2024, which is an act promoting a clean energy grid, advancing equity and protecting ratepayers. It's the 2024 Climate Act is what it's called. And that is, that regulates small clean energy generating facilities. That is solar, anaerobic digestion or wind facilities less than 25 megawatts, and small clean energy storage facilities with a rated capacity of less than 100 megawatts per hour. So things like a Tesla wall, things like a neighborhood battery storage system, those would be regulated under that act. That act calls for a consolidated permit. Starting October 1st of 2026, municipalities have to accept consolidated permits, an application for a consolidated permit. And what happens is the applicant can come in under one permit for all of the relief that they need, meaning zoning, conservation, Board of Health, whatever they need. But the real kicker of this act is that if they are not happy with the results at the municipality, they can automatically go to EFSB, which is the Energy Facility Siting Board. So that is how these small systems are being regulated. That is why your bylaw is 100 and over.
Could you repeat the name of that chapter again?
I have to look, of course, Mr. Lambert. Chapter 239 of the Acts of 2024. It's an act promoting a clean energy grid, advancing equity and protecting ratepayers. I can tell you right now that DOER is working on a model bylaw for cities and towns to be able to. We don't have, the act does not require cities or towns to enact a bylaw to for this consolidated permit process. There are regulations. The process is laid out in state regulations, but there is an opportunity for cities and towns to enact a model bylaw. Unfortunately, the DOER they do not have a model bylaw yet. We are actually, KP Law is actually working with DOER to come up with a model bylaw. We have pointed out the numerous problems and contradictions with the act and the regulations from a municipal standpoint. And to their credit, DOER is listening to us somewhat. So, but anyway, the model bylaw is not out yet.
Wendell, we'll be holding the public hearing on February 9th.
All right, thank you.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
I just had a quick question, Kim McEntee from Rosenberg. I know Amy was talking about the regulations, that the state is trying to put in for the best, and it looks like, I think that's somewhere in March. And so my question would be, if the state is trying to implement something and then we have our town meeting and bylaw gets, how does that bylaw and the regulations that the state is trying to how do they work in concert?
So
Maybe
the state regulations are for 100 milliwatt per hour or less. So it's for small energy storage facilities, not 100 or more, which is what your bylaw is regulating.
It's the same,
Does that help?
it's the same line, really, 100. We regulated 100 and this is under 100, so.
Correct. Correct.
So basically, the bylaw wouldn't touch the small, but the chapter clearly does, am I right?
Yes, correct.
Well, no, all the accessory stuff we've talked about is gonna probably, or most of it's gonna fall under that chapter.
Yep, it would.
Amy, you said 100 megawatt,
Kilowatts.
did you mean kilowatt?
I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Let me go back to my
Yeah,
cheat
megawatts
sheet.
is massive.
No, it is megawatts.
That's big,
That's
Rated
really
capacity less-
big.
less than 100 megawatts per megawatt hours. And then for solar and wind, it's 25 megawatt of capacity. And these are the regulations that have to be implemented by March 1st. But cities and towns do not have to accept applications until October 1st.
And I believe, I mean, I was
Maybe
following.
just a question, is 100 megawatts small, or is that really well up into the commercial range? That's a big number.
I think it's pretty big.
It was 5 megawatts in Western, 5.
Yeah.
Not 100.
yeah. So I think it's pretty good. I mean, I think as far as the consolidated permit, I believe I was trying to follow all this stuff for a while. I think the towns could still do their various processes, like, site plan approval and all these different things. It just has to kind of all work within a consolidated permit, and it has to happen within a certain amount of time. A town can't drag on for 3 or 4 years, I believe, as part of the objective of this consolidated permit process.
That is correct. The consolidated permit has to be done within 12 months. But there's a lot of questions, which is that we're working with DOER on, which is, when does the 12 months kick in? What happens if do you have to do all of the permits contemporaneously? Can you do them one at a time within that 12 months? There's a lot of questions that the regulations right now, the draft regulations, do not address.
And probably won't.
So just I hope begin to round this conversation out for this evening at least. I'm perfectly willing to have Peg and Amy and Matthew try to incorporate some of the comments that we have done tonight. In terms of the policy decision, I am never going to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And if we have the wrong policy, and it proves to be the wrong policy, change the policy. But as far as I can see, and I've been at multiple hearings dealing with these best sites in both my capacity on this board and on the zoning board. There's real concern among residents, and I don't suggest we ought to be governed by fear, but what we ought to be governed by is the will of the people who live here.
Any other discussion? Anybody else from the audience on Zoom? Test. All right,
Last,
Yes,
thing,
sorry, go
sorry,
ahead.
Kim again. What is the number on this bylaw? Are we talking about 100 megawatts?
Kilowatts.
Was it 8?
Yeah, anything exceeding 100 kilowatts.
Kilowatts. Ours is kilowatts.
Yeah.
That's megawatts. Okay, that's.
Yeah, 100 megawatts is grid scale.
Yeah.
That's controlling anything greater than or less than, because if it's less than, that's what we're doing.
I think it's less than, I believe. I mean, I defer to Amy, but I think it's less than.
So
Your,
Amy,
your bylaw is not to exceed the 100. That's what your bylaw is. That's how it's drafted. That does not exceed 100 kilowatt per hour or less.
So Amy, did you see chapter 239 of the Climate Act, said was about,
It's megawatts,
less than 100 megawatts or greater
Mhm.
than?
less than is the small energy, clean energy storage facilities for small. And then the small solar facilities and wind facilities are 25 megawatts of capacity.
Megawatts are greater than kilowatts, so then doesn't that mean that anything less than 100 megawatts, that would also pertain to what we're trying to do here?
Yep.
So then why wouldn't the state regs supersede what we're doing here?
But I agree with Wayne and I agree with Mr. Lambert that doesn't mean that you can't enact this bylaw. So if anything, you might at a subsequent town meeting, if you want to regulate the consolidated permit, then we would go back and possibly amend this or even do a consolidated permit zoning bylaw, which regulates how that consolidated permit works. But it's the option of the developer to come in under the consolidated permit or to come in under regular zoning.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, anything else for this discussion tonight?
I did, Madam Chair. If I could just get some direction, I wasn't sure if Mr. Carpenter was going to send out his concerns that he had listed very quickly, and I tried to write them down, but I didn't get them all. Would we be able to?
Yes.
And then possibly we would revise the bylaw accordingly.
What I'd like to suggest is this without overstepping. Obviously we need to rely on Matt as sort of our quarterback when it comes to town bylaws. So what I would suggest, Amy, is I can identify the concerns and you tell me, you want me to, if you send me a Word document that doesn't have markup in it, a clean Word document, I can make revisions to that and send it back to you. I would hesitate to edit a markup. That's not gonna help at this point. So the question is who goes first and then who goes next and then when are we done?
I mean, I guess I'd suggest that that it basically be like a group of me, Kristen, Tag, and Amy. And since Kristen is the chair, I think she should ultimately have kind of final decision if the board is at this point is willing to grant us to allow us to do that.
So moved.
And I guess the one caution I make is it's possible there could be a few other little things in here that we may sort of come across that haven't even been discussed tonight that we might feel it's imperative to alter the verbiage or put a new language for certain things. And so if the board could just kind of approve that or be aware of that possibility as well.
Yeah, that would be great. I think it'd be helpful if we produce a red line version so that people can see any changes. Yeah, I think that's.
Definitely. Changes from what we've got here. And I guess also having said that, I guess it would seem appropriate, at least tonight, or unless the board feels otherwise, to at least decide what zoning districts we want to allow and prohibit best in, unless the board would prefer to just have the four of us try to make that decision.
I can't do that. I can only do legal. I'm not choosing which zoning districts, unfortunately.
And I guess one thing I would say about the PD zones is that I believe that, I mean, it may have been several decades ago, but I believe that there was some logic was involved. What it was, I mean, I think I heard one person say it had to do with the soil conditions, but it's hard to know for sure. It may have been a few decades ago, but it seems like at some point in time, a decision was made that those PD zones could be slightly denser, could have a slightly wider variety of uses compared to the RC zone. And so in reality, on the ground, the PD zones are pretty similar to ours. See, like, you don't really notice much difference if you go from one to the other. Of course, you don't even know you're going from one to the other. In fact, still, there was a logic at some point in time that PD zones could have a little bit more variety of uses or be more.
If you want the
And so
history
it
on
kind of
this,
seems-
if you want the
that's
history on
kind of
this,
good.
if you want the history on the PD zones, the former member of this planning board and current member of the zoning board, Judy Barrett, can give you every last bit of history on how they were developed, because she worked very hard to do it.
Oh, okay. But anyway, I think that was kind of my logic for, given the difficulty that nobody really wants it anywhere, that was kind of my logic for choosing PD. But of course not the overlays, but as kind of the lesser evil, choosing PD as the zone, or the 3 PD zones as where it will be allowed. But I know that'll feel unfair to some people who do live in this PD zone. So that's a choice.
Right, sounds like we have a plan for that. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Stu McEntee, Rosewood Court, attached to this fine woman next to me.
Yeah.
Where do we get a copy of the current map that's being referenced? Because there are the overlays and things of that nature. How would?
Yeah, I could email you the map. At this point, it's public record. I mean, you can find the zoning maps online, but I can email you the
reference.
the map.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, can we, let's see, as regards to that, make a decision as to whether we're gonna strike the NDs or not right now to settle that, because that seems to be in the air at the moment. The business districts should be removed from it.
Yeah, I guess I would suggest that you do remove them. It only takes it from 9.7% to 9.1%, so it's not a big difference. And there's definitely some feeling in town that people don't want it in there. Although it's true what Wayne said, in reality, it's unlikely that a best would actually get built in the business zone.
In there, isn't that where you would actually want it to be? That's the most commercial,
Where there's more demand.
that's residential.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point too. That was kind of my original thinking why I found it in there. But the problem is, I mean, the business zones, they are very dense. Like it'd be one thing if you're say in Pembroke, where the industrial zones in Pembroke are not very dense, but our business zones, it's like, Millbrook and Hall's Corner and Cox Corner, well, not so much, but especially Hall's Corner, like it's this dense little cluster, and Snow Harbor is kind of this dense little cluster. So in that respect, I do feel like it kind of makes sense to prohibit vests in those zones. But you're absolutely right. I mean, like the whole point is that we don't want them in residential, so then we should allow them in business. So it's kind of a bit of a paradox there. You're correct.
Any thoughts there?
Frankly, I don't think we have to decide it now. It's literally whether we strike it or keep it.
Well, it's just the fact that we're gonna release the map, so these things grow leg once.
Yeah.
Well, but the map, you will be very surprised by how minimally the map changes when you release it without the business.
Sure, it's not.
Yeah.
0.6%.
It's.
All right.
All right, move on. All right, so let's move on to the flood hazard areas overlay district bylaw. So Matthew, did we find out, Matthew and Emily, actually, did we find out why this was removed from the zoning bylaw? Was it a mistake, an oversight, or did we really intentionally mean to strike that?
Why what was moved? Sort of language.
There was language, Lenore came to us and said this was removed from this, that we're missing language from the zoning bylaw, and so we need to put it back in. Did we find out what the original? Did we go back to the minutes of the town meetings and find out what was put in, what was agreed on, and then what would actually went into the zoning bylaw, and then what was struck and why that was struck?
I haven't been able to figure that out. I don't think and I'm not sure, I guess I wasn't here when Lenore originally came to the board the first time, but I'm not sure if she was referring to anything that was any language that had actually been deleted, but more she was saying, this is what I suggest, based on some study, one school group, this is what I suggest to improve the zoning bylaw, to improve the floodplain provisions. So.
I thought one of our action steps, which from our last meeting, was for you and Emily to find out we reviewed the last several town meetings and find out when the last
I did not,
Any
there's no difference from the warrant and what is in the current zoning bylaw. So there wasn't any language that was dropped from what was in the town meeting.
So why did she think that there was? I thought that was one of the whole reasons
I
that she
don't know
came and
if
said we're
anyone
missing language.
said that. I think it was based on what's report. I don't think.
Okay. But do we have that information from, I guess what I'm looking for is, do we have the proper justification to change any of this language? What's there now? Why do we want to change it? And who said we have to change it and why?
Yeah, so basically Lenore, or at least in my communication with her recently, kind of briefly, and I may not be kind of fairly summarizing her, what she said, but my impression is she kind of basically said, where there was the Woods Hole study that recommended this, and so that's why I recommended it to the planning board. So as far as the actual Woods Hole study, I don't think I've seen it. Maybe we have it somewhere, maybe Lenore could pull it out. When I came into the process, it was just kind of presented to me like, okay, here's what Lenore is suggesting to change the thing. Okay.
And I believe you talked to somebody from, was it PCR?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time talking with Nadia Madden at PCR, who I guess is one of their kind of floodplain experts. And she was actually extremely helpful in kind of looking at what we've got from Lenore and saying, okay, here are the changes that we suggest if you want to make this as close as possible to the current Massachusetts model bylaw floodplains. And then Amy Kressel suggested some of the other changes here. Once I had done that with DCR and got it to Amy, and so I guess she could speak more to that, but some of the verbiage here at the beginning, or especially in 202.1 zoning map, maybe one or two other things as well.
No, just to be clear, I did not make any comments on the floodplain bylaw because that cannot be changed without the approval of DCR and FEMA. The only thing I did was I added that if you are changing the map, the date of the map, then we had to change we had to change the zoning bylaw section 2 to reflect the new map because that is the section that covers the zoning map. That's all I did.
So, and Amy is here, she can speak for herself, but when I read the advice of town council, my sense was, I walked away from it with a real question as to why are we doing this?
Right, that's my question.
That's my question too, Mr. Dennison. I'm not, no one else, no other town that I know has amended their floodplain bylaw twice. So you already amended it back in 2020 when you were required to, when FEMA required us to. FEMA went through different basins and they started with the southeast region of Massachusetts, and that was the 2020. It went all the way through 2023. So, for example, up in Salisbury, we just did their floodplain. That they were required to just do theirs. But so far, I haven't seen it changed since then, since we were required to do it. So I don't know what the impetus was, why we're doing this.
So Amy, with any of the changes that you're seeing in here, are these changes that are in other floodplains and we're just, maybe we did ours ahead of time or before everybody else? Are you not seeing the changes that
No.
You're not seeing these changes, okay?
No, I'm not. So like I said, all of southeastern Massachusetts that was in a certain floodplain basin had to do their maps at the same time in 2020. This area was the first area that had to redo their maps. We had to do it during COVID. We requested an extension from FEMA because July 1st of 2020, we were going to lose our flood insurance if we didn't get these maps done. And, FEMA wasn't very sympathetic to our, holding town meetings during COVID, et cetera, but we did manage to do it. But that's how I remember that Duxbury's was then, or so I mean, I just don't understand how this came to be, and that's what I thought we were going to find out between the last time I was before you and this time. I mean, I guess the changes that have been recommended I'm not even sure who they've been recommended by, if it was just Lenore or other people, but it appears that the changes have been approved by FEMA and DCR. Although I'm not sure about DCR. I know that Matthew said FEMA has approved them, but
Oh, sorry, I mean, it's the reverse, actually.
oh, sorry.
Yeah, it was DCR approved them, not FEMA.
But so, I mean, if they're approved, I guess they can go forward. I just I'm just not really sure again why we're doing it.
That's my question too.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree, you know, given that we don't have to do it, I feel some caution about it. Luckily it's up to the board, but, it seems as though it's not entirely clear how really exactly why it began in the first place. I mean, I guess it never hurts to update. It never hurts to kind of update one's zoning bylaws and make sure they meet current standards, but with floodplains, there always is the danger, as you know, as Amy has emphasized, that, you know, if you make a little mistake, it could be catastrophic, so in that sense.
We don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So would it, maybe in the interest of time, I'm wondering if it would make sense if we decided not to, we didn't recommend this to go forward, and that we dug into it, took our time and found out got some more background on how Lenore came to us and how we got connected to DCR, so that we have all those answers. Again, when we stand up at town meeting, we want to have complete transparency, traceability. We want to be able to explain why we're doing what we're doing.
I think that's probably a good idea, yeah, because I feel the same discomfort that I think you feel.
Any thoughts on that?
I mean, my recollection was when Lenore was in, was that when the 2020 amendments were done, that some provisions were inadvertently
That's what I thought.
deleted, but when I read this today, one, I don't know who this came from.
Right.
And some of it was struck out, some of it is new text with no kind of background of clarity, so, yeah, I would say at this point, I wouldn't be comfortable about advancing this.
Can I make the counterpoint? I'm gonna reiterate what Zengel said earlier. I'm hearing everybody say, I'm not sure, I'm a little afraid. I'm not really afraid of this. It looks like housekeeping to me. We're changing addresses, we're updating 2020 maps to 2024, which we should do, I think. We want to be current. You know, the environment is increasingly dynamic. I think it's important that we track the best information we have available about our risks. With the assurance that it's not going to negatively impact homeowners, such as the disclaimer at the top that says it's not going to cause anybody to lose flood insurance. I mean, it seems entirely reasonable to me. The only risk that I see is that it has now inserted at page 3 on points 6 and 7 underlined and bolded that private or public wells are prohibited, and site wastewater disposal septic are prohibited in 3 zones. So if we were to identify that those 2 specific changes are going to unduly constrain residents' rights in the future, then I would have caution about this. But other than that, it seems to be an obvious improvement to me. And I don't want the planning board to be seen by the public as taking 1 step forward or 5 steps forward and then 4 steps backward. You know, and I don't really want to look at it again, frankly. If this is good, if it's done, let's put it before the town. And if the town doesn't think it's ready or they have doubts that we haven't addressed by the time we've had the public hearing and the comments on the public hearing, then we won't pass it.
I think
It's so simple.
we asked a lot of these same questions at the last meeting and we don't have the answers. So that's my hesitation. I'm not opposed to this. I just don't think we have enough information to make it.
So why stop, man?
Well,
Just
I think also we are talking about some policy changes. And is that what we're?
those two lines that I mentioned, right?
What? I think it impacts a number of zones too.
Well, it looks as if we brought in explicitly instead of just referencing exterior regulations.
How about this? If Matthew could get if you're able to get all the information from Lenore to find out exactly why she thought something was missing, how she came to us, why she came to us, what she came to us with, like if you could provide it before and after, and then also same thing to the DCR contact, then we could have that conversation in 2 weeks. At that point, we could decide.
changes.
Well, I do have to, either submit it or not submit it to select board of the town manager's office before the warrant closes.
When is the warrant closing?
The 26th. And I told them I would try to get to them by the 23rd.
6 is our meeting. So if we decide the 26th, certainly they'd be okay with finding out the morning of the 27th.
I don't think so, because I think they have to vote in their meeting on the 26th.
Okay.
So yeah, to finalize things. Yeah. I mean, of course, we could always withdraw to the floor of town meeting or in some other
I see it, I
fashion.
mean, it seems like it's knock it off the track.
I'm not, I mean, yeah, it's really up to you folks. I'm just not, I'll do my best, but I'm not sure I'll be able to get an advances in the next 2 weeks. It's sometimes things that seem simple don't wind up being, you kind of go down a rabbit hole and each thing leads to more things, and I've got other things on my plate as well, so. I mean, honestly, now hearing some people mention it, now it does vaguely come back to me. There was some talk about how something had been left out at when someone about a submitted, but I'm not sure if that was in reference to floodplains or something else. And of course, that could have been incorrect anyway, but I do now I do vaguely recollect some talk about that, but I can't remember the details, so that's kind of useless.
It's frankly, it's not useless to me, because if the basis upon which we're proposing to amend this regulation is, I vaguely remember somebody said something about something. It's not ready from pride time. And I personally would vote to defer consideration of this one, but.
So tag that it does only give us 1 year to discuss. So we are in favor of
Well, again,
discussing it
it's, we
later.
have public hearing.
Yep.
It's not. It just, knowing the amount of work in the backlog, I can't support pushing work that's on the threshold of completion onto the back. We're just hurting ourselves. So that's just where I stand.
I appreciate that. Any other thoughts? All right, why don't we entertain a motion to defer or not?
I move to defer consideration of this beyond the current. Annual town meeting.
Second.
Discussion?
Do we need to make the motion similar to the last one that we kicked off by advising that Matt make the proper notifications?
I couldn't remember all the words. And I said, like,
Think to the effect of allowing the town manager, town planner to.
to inform and work with whomever that they are
Appropriate
required to do
stakeholders.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right,
as amended.
yes. Any discussion? All right, call for a roll call vote, pardon? Oh, do we need a second?
I second the amendment, yes.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
We'll call for a roll call vote, all those in favor? Opposed?
Nick,
Abstentions, all right, passes, we will defer for now, continue moving forward.
you gotta work on this
We
thing.
will, absolutely. I want to hold off on talking about anything else related to this, because so Amy, I think you're off the hook. Thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate your
Thanks,
help.
everyone. Nice to see you.
Since we have some people here for Evelyn's Way, let's go ahead and get to them. Thank you so much for your patience. Really appreciate it. When we did our council, we have to grab her. All right, so do we have an applicant for Evelyn's Way subdivision?
Yes, I'm representing the applicants, Mark Casey, survey consultants, Doug Berardi, from Duxbury, and Doug's nominator, Duxbury. Emily, could you put sheet 2 on the screen? Thank you. So we've got about 3.5 acres of land, which is,
Right in front of his head.
say again?
You're standing like right in front of us.
Oh, I think they're saying, could you move? one way?
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, I apologize.
In any event, we have some wetlands on the property in this corner back here. Almost the entire property is in zone 2 area of contribution to a public water supply or Duxbury's APOG. It's the exact same mapping. We've got wetlands lines to the north of the property, wraps around and basically touches the property. These little symbols here where we've done perk test. We've also shown the wetlands protection overlay district, which we've got a just barely kisses that corner of the property. Oops, excuse me. Any event, if you could go to sheet 3, please. Get back up one. And so what we're creating is a 2-lot subdivision. This lot is a little over 60,000 square feet of contiguous upland. This lot is a little over 72,000 square feet of contiguous upland. It's 50-foot wide road layout with 30-foot roundings on both sides. The 150-foot diameter or 75-foot radius cul-de-sac all meets Duxbury's requirements from your subdivision rules and regulations. This will be a private way, okay, never to be accepted by the town. Okay, if you can go to the next sheet, please. So we have there's no town water available. So up here is a location for a well. Over here is the location for a well. These are proposed houses. They're, I always tell an applicant, because we don't know exactly what's going to be built, but give me the biggest footprint that you think anybody could possibly want to build on the lot. So that's what we're showing. These won't be the exact houses. These are not based on architectural plans for an actual house to be built. Because it's 3 lots or less, the roadway is 14-foot wide with a 1.5-foot cut berm on either side. You see, we've got drainage chambers, which is designed to pick up all the roof runoff and recharge it to the aquifer. The drainage is all coming down here to double frame of grate catch basins, goes to a drainage manhole. Then to a treatment unit, which is called First Defense, basically pre-treating stormwater runoff. So we get rid of fines and suspended solids. And then it goes into a leaching facility. This is also in a priority habitat of a natural heritage endangered species. We've already got a permit and a letter of no take. We have the species of that's of concern here is the eastern box turtle, which most of you have seen. If you live in Duxbury, obviously, you see them in the roads quite often. So in any event, we have our permit for natural heritage and endangered species. Fire department, we don't have a hydrant close enough, so we'll be doing each house will have a sprinkler system. And I was hoping that I talked to Captain Mary today, and he was going to prepare a short letter and email it to Emily that said that would meet the requirements for safety for the Duxbury Fire Department. We received your peer review engineer, Pat Brennan's comments and responded to all those. And if anybody has any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Thank you. Mark, appreciate it. Looks like we have 3 waivers. Were you planning to strike one?
We had inadvertently asked for a waiver for sidewalks and none are required. Okay, and actually, one of the other waivers, I don't believe we really need. I have never actually thoroughly read appendix B of your subdivision rules and regulations. But 1.1B says the applicant may propose alternate materials and methods, so it's permissive. May propose alternate materials and methods of construction which deviate from the requirements of these specifications, provided that such proposed alternates are of equal or better quality to the materials and methods of construction specified in this section. The board will be the sole judge as to the acceptability. So how that applies.
Cape Cod berm versus granite.
No, this is from a drainage pipe, and you are supposed to have 2.5 feet cover to the roadway, right? And at the shallowest point, we only have a little over a foot. And the reason for that is because of where we have groundwater, okay, where we've determined that. Even though we are not subject, because this is 4 houses or 4 lots or less, even though we're not subject to DEP stormwater regulations, stormwater regulations require 2 feet separation from the bottom of this subsurface infiltration design to groundwater. So we agree with Mr. Brennan that 2 feet is the way to go. It's good engineering practice, even though we, technically can't be held to that standard. So that means that to get the proper slope in the drainage pipes that, funnel all the runoff into the first defense unit and ultimately into the subsurface recharge area, they're going to be closer. We're not going to have that 2.5 feet of separation. Okay? But what we did was, instead of using concrete pipe, we were using ductile iron pipe, which is rated for H20 loading. It's very, very strong. There's no chance that there's going to be any vehicular traffic that's going to damage it or break it. So that is one of the waivers that we'd asked for, but after reading Appendix B, I don't think we need it. But, and the only other waiver we asked for was for, let me see. You got a portion of your regulation which requires existing trees within the proposed right of way that are equal to or greater than 12-inch diameter to be shown on the plan. We didn't make it a point to locate trees. We're going to take down as few trees as possible. So it's they're within the road layout, and if they can be saved, they will.
Comments from the board?
Is Pat here?
Yes.
It was.
I saw him just be started.
Oh, yeah.
There he is.
Yeah,
Okay,
there we go.
great.
Yeah. Pat, is there anything you'd like to share with us?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. As Mark mentioned, I reviewed the original set of plans that they submitted, sent a letter into the board in December. They submitted revised plans and drainage calculations last week, which pretty much addressed all of my comments. At this point, like Mark said, I believe that they only need that one waiver with the plans that they show right now, not showing the 12-inch diameter trees. I concur with Mark that the ductile iron pipe is a superior material from the concrete pipe for the drain pipes. You can have less than, up down to a foot of cover over the ductile iron pipe, and it's still structurally sound. So I think that's a better option in this case. I apologize. I sent over a letter later this afternoon, probably only an hour before the meeting started. And there's a few conditions that I would suggest that the board impose on any decision if the project were to be approved. One of them, I believe, was Mark was mentioning, the regulations require that you have, with a private well, that you have sufficient flow and water quality to have potable water at these locations. The last time that we ran into this on a subdivision in Duxbury, it was Dogwood Drive off of Route 53. And those were all private wells with septic systems. And what happened with that one is each of the individual lots, as required for the wells, they have to get permitting through the Board of Health. So I believe, I'm not positive, but I believe there was probably a condition in the planning board's approval of the subdivision that they provide that documentation, or at least they meet the Board of Health regulations for the private wells on the lots. And I know with that particular subdivision, all of those wells had adequate flow and water quality. I actually reviewed all of those applications for the Board of Health when they were submitted. So, you know, complying with the Board of Health standards or requirements for the private wells would be one of my recommended conditions. The other one, as Mark mentioned, and it's something that I've kind of recommended to the board on many of these smaller 2 and 3 lot subdivisions, is that the road be maintained as private in perpetuity. The main reason being that the DPW, this is basically a glorified driveway, and the DPW does not want to, they don't want the responsibility for plowing these small little driveways. So that's the main reason for recommending that it be private going forward. And then I think I think those were really the only conditions. Oh, the only other condition, and it's not necessarily a condition, but your rules and regulations require that the location, size, number, and species of shade trees be determined jointly by the developer and the tree warden, and then approved by the board. You know, I think that's obviously the way to go about this, but I think if it's not, if the number and so forth of the trees is not determined before the close of the public hearing, then I suggest a condition that they, once they make that determination with the tree warden, they bring it back to the board so that you can see how many trees and the species and locations of them and so forth, so you can approve that. So, you know, at this point, I think they've addressed all of my other comments, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Pat, thank you for sending over the letter. I don't think it was in our packet. We haven't had a chance to review it, the revision. Pardon?
I uploaded it, but
Today.
it was at like 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I know that I personally would like to have a chance to review that in detail, but Pat, I really appreciate the review, and I wanted to say thank you for suggesting that we recommend the well flow test. It makes sense. That's just a safety, a health and safety issue. The private way, I think that was going to be, I think we're all in alignment on that. You mentioned that too. That would be part of the agreement or the approval. As far as the trees are concerned, because we get a lot of requests to waive the 12-inch trees or more, but we what if there's a 2-foot tree? Like, are there larger trees that we could say we would like those tagged to make sure that there's some provision to save those? Yeah.
I would suggest this.
Yeah.
I would suggest, and I'll give you an example
Sure.
of the idea of saving trees gone horribly wrong in Duxbury. It's called Hound's Ditch. When we do a road, okay, and this is kind of simple because it's a roadway that's not that long, okay? But the actual, it's 50-foot wide road layout, but it's only 17 feet back and berm to back and berm.
Right.
The center line of that paved surface should match the center line of the road, okay? Did Hound's Ditch, in the attempt to, not questioning good motives, but in the attempt to possibly save trees, the pavement of Hound's Ditch wiggles all over through the 50-foot wide road layout. And it's just, I would suggest again, when we go to the point where we have to send a survey crew out and stake this road for construction, okay? Once those stakes are in, but before we proceed, then
have the tree warden come out. So he can see what we can reasonably say. That's 12-inch diameter or even less.
We could make that a condition as well. It's funny, if this was on the other end of Keene, I would have asked for sidewalks on the Keene Street portion, but I see where you are and it would be kind of out of line to have a sidewalk there, I think.
Yeah. There would be a sidewalk to nowhere.
Right, yeah, start, stop, right there. Any thoughts from the board?
Oh, I'd like to engage in the discussion about the trees. I really like the Hammond Stitch Road. The fact that it is winding, it keeps the speeds down. It makes it a little more scenic and private. This is a very short road, and it might benefit from a little curve. Frankly. So I'd be in favor.
There is a little curve in it.
Yeah, I see it's got and yeah. That was an interesting conversation. I appreciate you bringing things in. But you know how it is, every time we wish away and wipe away these bylaws, I mean, people tend to treat that as precedence, and I'm hesitant to do. And it's not a very big ask, right? Because it isn't a large area. You're not surveying hundreds of feet of forest.
I agree. I guess.
See your point. It's just discussion.
And like, did we get a letter from the fire department yet? No, not yet. Okay.
We have a letter from the fire department regarding the T turnaround.
Kind of the layout.
Which is kind of a bent T into, if anybody's wondering, Captain Mary, Alex Mary, actually, we have the template for the largest, fire apparatus that Duxbury's got. And he actually feels this is better for them than a typical T.
Just like you go up one and come back and swing around. That's always a big concern for us.
It actually, if we did a typical T and then had two driveways extending from that, now we're increasing impervious surface as well. So,
Any other questions from the board?
I do have a question about make sure I'm saying this, lot B. Because, and I appreciate your pointing out, as we know, that the layout area for the house is maximized. It's not actual or anticipated to be in that size. And we have grading going on that brings in a 10/20 pitch, as I read it. Is that right on the side, which is the maximum allowed under the bylaw?
could you put, let me see, sheet number 4?
Yeah, we can sheet number 4. And there's a couple of things about this that raise some concerns. Gotta zoom way in. There's a detail above, actually. I think the detail more helpful. Scroll up and move this page down, and then focus at the top there. And it's next to the locus map with the dotted green lines across.
Where the insert is?
Yes, the insert.
Yep.
So it's at a larger scale. So we have a steep slope directly adjacent to that driveway. And as I read it, a 10-foot high retaining wall that is topped by lawn area, which has a 1-foot slope at the edge. So that seems to me to present a significant hazard.
In what respect?
Well, I mean, you're talking about an area of the ground where the ground pitches away for a foot, and then there's a top of a retaining wall, and then there's a 10-foot drop. And so I question the necessity of this, or if there's a way to revise the plans to eliminate this hazard on the parcel.
We could certainly revise the plans again. This is not, this is taking the biggest footprint, okay, that most likely will never get built, okay? In the Army, we would call this a swag, a sophisticated wild ass gas, okay? We're placing this house that will probably never get built on the lot, and dealing with the, existing contours and coming up with a grading solution. This is not written in stone. This does not have to be, and this probably will not be. If it were, okay?
Well, can I qualify that? When you say this, the house footprint or the retaining wall and the slope?
The retaining wall, the
Oh.
slope, because it's all based on this
Yeah.
huge house footprint.
Okay, then what should we anticipate? That's the.
I would think you're gonna be building a house, what, 26 to 2,800 square feet?
It's taking in the 3,000 square foot
Yeah.
range. But yeah.
Okay, so 3,000 square feet. You're looking at a footprint of a house with a, 24 by 24 garage. Significantly, it's bigger than what's gonna be built. So, and the position of where it is on the lot, just, again, we have to show something that's proposed. And so when I say there's nothing written in stone here, it goes for the grading. It goes for the size and shape of the house as well.
I'm sorry, but if we do this every time, and it's a little concerning to me, because frankly, what house goes on that lot?
It's not under our purview.
It's not under our purview.
Yeah.
It's whether that subdivision complies with our subdivision statute such that they can choose to build a house in the manner in which that
They choose
complies
it
with our building code. And I don't like to put the people who are obviously doing this in good faith to the task of tell me, how are you gonna grade a house that nobody's ever even contemplating building? If this complies with our subdivision regulation with minor waivers, then we're required to approve it. That's as far as I go.
Thanks, man. Any other questions, Doug?
Well, it's on the same topic, so I don't want to aggravate Wayne any further.
It's like, there are a lot of things that it just doesn't, it's interesting, it's entertaining, but it doesn't pertain to what we need to do. I do want to open up for public comment. I see there's somebody else here. I would like to tell us your name and.
Yeah, my name is Ken Shine, and this is my wife Nancy.
What's your address?
840 Main Street. We live
You're
almost directly across from the proposal. And we've been in town over 41 years. So we've seen all kinds of iterations of what's happened to our neighborhood between the 12 to 15 mansions off of King Street by Camp Wing, the decimation of the woods on North Street, on that project, that disaster. Again, it was a tree thing that was out there. We were promised the trees that would be taken down, and the builder went in and leveled that place out. It's a complete empty stretch. And every day we sit in our yard. Like I said, we've been here 41 years. We raised 2 children. We love the town. We purchased this property. We have no water. We have no well. We have a well. We have no water. We have no gas. It's a very, very rural area. We have all kinds of deers. And I don't deprive the owner of the property his right within compliance. And I agree with Mr. Dennison. If everything is compliance, I have no problem with it. I prefer if it wasn't. I prefer to look at my trees and have the deer and the fox and the, fisher cats come walking through the yard. But again, that's not my call. And within compliance. But the street is too narrow. It is the most dangerous section of Duxbury. For reasons unbeknownst to me, people think that Keene Street is a runway, 50 to 60 miles an hour, throwing rubbish out the door. I can't tell you the number of people that walk up and down Keene Street, moving bags of rubbish that some jackass decides doesn't make it to the transfer station and just tosses out on Keene Street. But if we could put, I apologize, I used to do a lot of public speaking, and I haven't retired a few years ago, so I'm sort of great. Could I see the map that shows the final document that shows where the placement of the driveway is? Please. And I don't know what the solution is, and I don't,
When you say the driveway, Ken, what are you referring to?
Can I
exactly?
approach this? Sure. Have you, permission?
Yeah, you and I have met before. by the way.
Yeah, no, I owe you money, probably. I used to be a lawyer, so I. Okay, so we are here, down here, And this looks to me where they're proposing the driveway going in circles. You could not pick a worse place. I'm promising you, there is a 3-second delay. When we pull out our driveway, we count to 10 because there's a hump. And going over that hump is a 3-second delay before you see the car coming down on top of you. Every morning when I used to drive to Boston, I'd pull out in the yard, I'd take a left on King Street heading north, and within a second there'd be a car on my ass because he or she would be flying over the hump. At nighttime, you can't see the lights. The town knows there's a problem with the road. The town knows it's too narrow because if you're heading south on Keene, you go past my driveway, I'm the house with the big windows. And then the guy beside me, Will Boudreau, he's got the huge outcropping of ledge, which is in his front yard. It's the size of an elephant. People tend, when they see the ledge, you go to the center of the road. If you go to the center of the road, the jackass coming down from the south heading north is at the center of the road. It's not wide enough to accommodate. I invite you to sit in my driveway, I'll bring coffee down for you. And you can watch the car on Main Street heading towards Camp Wing, and they're all straddling to their left-hand tires are on the left side, on the wrong side of the partition. The town knows this because the town, and if I could approach the map, and Mark, you can confirm this. On or about here, the town has placed yellow markers in the roadway, acknowledging that the road is too narrow and trying to almost encourage people to, pull over a little bit because it's just not going to work. Now, our daughters grew up on the street riding their bicycles. They weren't allowed to ride their bikes on King Street, our rules, because you couldn't see going over the hump. We used to call it the hump, right where the Boudreaux live. Go up and over. They have to walk their bikes. They walk the dogs. There are probably 30 to 40, maybe more joggers, people walking up and down. And you're always ditching in the woods. This is not on the developer and the owners of the property, but the town has to look at the width of the road and they've got to reconfigure something to make the road wider because it's going to be a disaster. I mean, it's a significant issue. And like I said, we've been here 41 years, so there's nothing we haven't seen. And I sort of got out there with my tape measure the other day, but I was afraid of getting killed. And it's an enforcement, my wife and I both in law enforcement, we both retired. It's an enforcement issue of people coming down. But if the town could find a way to configure the road wider, especially on the east side, you can't move it on the west side because there's a huge piece of ledge in front of 830. But if they could configure it or widen the road at that point, it would make a big difference. And I know you can't do anything about the hump. That's why we don't have water. That's why we don't have gas in the street. They've always told us that. And, we don't have a hydrant. Our house goes up in fire. It's gone by the time they get there. There's no fire plugs within a mile.
Put it around the corner.
Up on North Street, there's a fire plug, but our house is gone by the time, and that's fine. We understood that, but
You're 1,200 feet away from the nearest hydrant.
where do you think was on North Street?
Yeah, at the intersection of Temple and Keene and Taylor. There's a hydrant. We're about 1,200 feet away.
On where?
The intersection, just if you're going towards Pembroke on Temple Street, you go just past Keene Street on your right. And there's a hydrant about 70 feet down on the right-hand side of the road.
So we're still 1,200 feet from the hydrant.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we're by the time tax rate gets it, we're gone. So that's fine. And I'm not, that's nothing to do, but it's the width of the road has to be reconsidered. Somebody has to go out, sit in the driveway, watch the lights. And I promise you'll be shocked at how narrow that section is. Because when you see the rocks to the right, I'm repeating myself, you tend to veer to the left because you want to avoid the rut. You do that, the guy on the other side's veering, there you go.
Well, I appreciate you coming tonight. I wanted to say that this, what you're talking about, the traffic falls outside our purview. However, what I was going to suggest is if you had a chance to talk to the highway department.
I know, I figured we'd start at the top and work our way down.
We're really here just about the subdivision. We can't talk, but I would talk to them. Any interaction that I've ever had with them, they've been super responsive. There are a number of different traffic calming devices that you can use, that you can install that could help. I'm looking at a picture on Google Maps, so I can see exactly what you're talking about. I can see why that would be a concern, but if you've retired and you have some time, I would seriously consider talking to them.
Well, not that much.
Spent
it all here.
Yeah.
But I mean, but what I was thinking though is where the proposed driveway is.
Yeah.
If that was, well, the reason I came to the planning board, because here's your plan.
Yeah.
Here's where the driveway is expected to be. If that could be moved further south on Keene Street to avoid, it would give the person more opportunity. When the person pulls out of the.
Yeah.
Whatever the name of the road is, and they, whatever direction they head, they're gonna have a problem. If you were to be moved further south, and I don't wish to put that on to the fellow that lives, Sean Manari, I think his name is, that lives the house just after this. It just would make more sense. I don't know how that could be configured. It would just give you an extra opportunity. And that purview is upon you guys in terms of the placement of the.
It is to talk to the developer gets to pick exactly, well, I mean, with input, of course. Is that something that you all?
No, we're not gonna change the location of the entrance of the subdivision.
Yeah.
I would point out that back in 1991, I bought a house at foreclosure at 6 Old North Street. And at least 2 times a day, okay, on my way to and from my office in Duxbury to 6 Old North Street, I drove this road very successfully for years.
Okay.
I guess we're wrong then. I guess, when we look out the
We
window.
did it successfully too. We're still.
Yeah, we're 41 years we've been here, so.
A car accident or two, but we,
And it took going to the meeting to get, God bless Joe Shea, to get the North Street and Keene Street, where there was never any problem with North and Keene on the intersection. All the accidents were there until Joe finally arranged the having, 4-way stop sign put there. Because people just go 100 miles an hour. And with all of the new construction, the number of trucks, number of trailers, the number of people that are on the road. Just have to take a few minutes to sit and look at it. You can figure it out, but
We appreciate your input.
appreciate having the opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but seriously, call the highway.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's something you'll be considering too. Or anything else for the board? Yeah. Okay. All right, so I would like to defer this because we haven't received all the information and have more questions. I recommend to continue.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, sorry, I just want to check. So, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting your first name. It's Casey, right? Mark Casey. So I think you still have, based on and I know Pat Brennan just released his letter like about 2 hours ago, or maybe not 3 hours ago. So I think you probably haven't looked at it close yet, but I think you still have probably a few tweaks or revisions to.
I have not seen it.
Okay, yeah. But my guess is there'll be at least a few tweaks, so this will give you, I imagine you probably only need 2 weeks to do those. Yes, that's.
Yeah, I would like to, if I could ask, we're gonna continue this, can we continue it for a night that doesn't have,
Yes, I would suggest, if you don't want anything, I would wait.
Yeah, don't do it 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, so for the 26th, we don't have, the 26th, we have a public hearing for 51 Wadsworth.
Yeah.
And the 9th, we have public hearings for the bylaws. So I know that puts you 6 weeks out, so it's your choice.
I just have a question, the deference or the continuations, because that information wasn't received by Mr. Brennan until 2 hours.
Yeah, we just didn't have time to read it, so that.
Is there a time frame on when that was supposed to be submitted?
no.
Just, I'm curious.
I think just, everybody does the best they can.
No, yeah. That's everyone.
We did, for Pat to be able to turn it around in a short time,
He's on it.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. It's your choice. Although we'll probably have Amy. Will we have Amy next time? We won't.
I don't think so. I mean, unless there's something with the zoning bylaw limits that we need to discuss some more, but I don't think.
Sorry, if that's the case, but it helps to delay it. I mean, it's, I guess.
If that puts you off 6 weeks, is that going to impact you?
6 weeks would be the next meeting?
Well, we have them every 2 weeks.
Yes.
Next time we have another public hearing. If
Yeah,
we did this one first, though, this one would be shorter.
Yeah, I mean, my guess is it seems like this one, I mean, I don't want to make any prediction for sure, but it seems like this one is kind of close to the end. It's sort of probably be fairly short.
So what's on the agenda for the meeting we're talking about?
51 Wadsworth,
which
which
is
is a public hearing. It's like our 6 or 7 or 8.
And I think there's
small
a,
subdivision.
It's a two lot subdivision has been pretty controversial.
Oh, Eric Thomas,
yes,
yeah.
but I mean, we
Okay,
could,
I'm fine with that date.
The 26th?
Yeah.
Oh, we'll just try to push you first.
That's fine. As long as Pat, just. Obviously Pat's made his comments, is
Yeah.
we're gonna have more after the tweets, we'll have to look at it again.
No.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I don't want to mess with his time if he's that busy. Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Pat, are you available on the 26th?
I believe so, but like I said, Mark's pretty much taking care of my comments at this time. You know, I'll be, at least be at the meeting in case any of the board members have any questions after you have a chance to review my letter.
And I think we'll need you anyway for 51 Wadsworth.
Yeah, right.
And I think we have one more person on Zoom, Tesco. Is there anything you would like to
It's
add?
my engineer working from his condominium in Fort Myers.
Oh, good. All right, anything else? So I guess we need, I'm sorry,
Don't rub it in, Tony.
need a motion to.
Kind of a chilly 73 up here.
Oh.
We're gonna continue the public hearing. Zero.
Everyone's fine.
Everyone's way, sorry, everyone's way, to Jan 26. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
All right,
We can retire.
all right, everybody. We have
Kind
three more
of
meetings.
the justice in 2023.
A few more things.
yeah, sorry. I think we're-
Yeah, and then I did, I went to the Department of Justice in 2006.
Do we have a motion
The
to?
senior litigator, the economic.
Oh, wait a second. Maybe just read it correctly?
Yes, a new law. Just said how about we're working on in Houston.
In Houston?
Yeah.
Oh, terrific. Yes, great job. And then one of the, I am back with,
Two
I work
things
for the
on
paper.
5 at the end of
But I
the
was happy
report
to-
there. You guys already asked something that you decided, so you're kind of aware of all the stuff going on. The then for number 4, the comp plan, you can read that, what's going on there. There'll be more report to do for that one. And I think, also we got some kind of grant.
Woody Owl or
for
something,
PPA
something a little
accessibility,
bit.
which you're probably here. Not here for the best future. I guess it's actually. That got that one. And then, I don't know if Kristen, you want to discuss this, but this whole idea of like, attending other boards, meetings to publicize this, we can wait.
Yeah.
I put walking my backyard sometime.
Yeah.
Look what he's done with those woods.
Just to go over, next time our tag, Amy, Kristen and Matt, we're going to work on Bess.
Best.
And then for the floodplain, either we put off, Matt, you know, just put in to figure out the different pieces, so we can work on that. That's the first thing we tackle in March. And we're got that ready to go for next.
Yeah, I think both that and the reconfirmation. That's what times we think we have.
Anything else? Anything? All right, entertain motion.
Sure. Second.
Hi.
All right.